Hello, can everyone hear me all right? Tuning in for the Fantasy Grounds DM training. Gonna put on a little bit of music. Awesome. All right, I just got confirmation you can hear me okay. Thank you for tuning in. This is Fantasy Grounds DM training. If you've ever been curious about how to use Fantasy Grounds to run your games, this training is basically designed to take you from I just install the software to I can run a prepared adventure module or book for Fantasy Grounds. This is actually being conducted as a class, so I have 3 individuals here who are taking the class with me, but I'm also monitoring the chat for questions throughout, so feel free to pop your questions in as we go through. I'm going to introduce those who are on stream with me today and who are acting as the students for this class. But I consider you all students, so feel free to pop in whatever questions, and I'll be looking out for them in case there's something you want to know. If you have Fantasy Grounds but you never learned how to use it, or if you want to download a demo version right now, the demo version is free. Feel free to follow along and check things out as we do this live as well. All right, thanks for tuning in. Can I have my students introduce themselves? We'll start with Alexis. We're going to do name, pronoun, and what they're hoping to take away from today's class.
Okay, well, hello everyone. I am Alexis. My pronouns are she, her, they, them. And I am hoping that to kind of just learn more about Fantasy Grounds, see how it works, and gain a better understanding of how it functions.
Awesome.
So thank you.
Thanks, Alexis. Next, we have Brittany.
Hello, my name is Brittany. My pronouns are she, her, and I am hoping to learn how to be much better at Fantasy Grounds.
Awesome. Brittany is in my regular home game where I DM for her for Fantasy Grounds and also uses it in her home game as well. And last but not least, we have Matt.
Hi, I'm Matt. Pronouns he, him, and I am looking to just learn how to run stuff in Fantasy Grounds. I promised to DM a game for a bunch of my friends who've never played before, so and this is the best way to do it since we're all spread out due to COVID and such. So
awesome. Thank you for all for being here. So to kind of give those who are watching a rough idea of the agenda, I've given the students this agenda already in a separate Discord chat. But basically, we're going to start with how do we get people connected to your Fantasy Grounds game? How do you start a Fantasy Grounds game? We're going to go over the different parts of the interface. We're going to look at what it looks like from the player's perspective. We're going to talk about how to run a module, which is essentially an adventure that's been pre-made for you in Fantasy Grounds. Pretty much all the D&D adventures for 5th edition have been made, as well as a lot of third-party content. We'll talk about how to run combat and actually show examples of running combat. And then we will also touch very lightly on some adding new material, including maps and some of the map features that Fantasy Grounds features. So that's kind of the overall agenda. I'll make sure to show it on screen once we get into Fantasy Grounds game. But if not, we'll get started. Not hearing any music. Oh. Maybe if I raise the volume a little bit. Hopefully that's better. I just turned up the music a little bit. It might just be too low. All right, cool. Awesome. So we're going to start from the home screen. For those, for my students, I'm actually going to go live as well right now so you can see my overall screen. So you should be able to tune in on your end to see my screen. And so what we have here is the Fantasy Grounds start screen. This is what you'll see when you first load up Fantasy Grounds. And you're going to notice this same word popping up, which is campaign. So load campaign, create campaign, join campaign. So basically, when we think of the word campaign, we're used to thinking of them in a D&D sense as, like an adventure. But I kind of think of it as your room, basically where you're going to be playing your game. And you might have different rooms depending on different purposes. So we're going to start with how do we create a campaign, aka a room, so that we can get people connected. Alexis, Brittany, and Matt, were you able to join the live stream on Discord?
Yep.
On Discord.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. So first things first, when you're ready to start and make a campaign, you're going to hit create campaign. And so here is where you're going to name your campaign, depending on what purpose it is. For today, I'm making a campaign for DM training. So I might call this, Fantasy Grounds DM training. You're going to pick the rule set that you want to run this training in. So in this case, we're doing it for 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons. And then we come to the first decision you have to make, which is how do you want people to connect to your game? So what I recommend you do is keep the server type as cloud, and I'll explain why in a sec, but just set a password. You want to keep it as public because you want it to be findable, but you want it to be, you don't want everyone to be able to join your server. You want the people who you're inviting to be able to join. So you might pick a password, maybe I'll say password here, and that will allow people to join. Now, for chat name, this is just the name that you want to go by. By default, it's going to be GM. If you want to put, I usually put like GM Violet because I like being called that in the FG chat, but it's up to you. Now, you wouldn't switch it to private unless you just don't want people to be able to connect. For LAN, LAN pretty much is how they used to do things in Fantasy Grounds Classic, which is the older version of Fantasy Grounds. The idea behind that was you might have to do some port forwarding and they'll be able to connect directly to your computer through that way. It's still an option there, in which case you would give the people connecting like your IP address and all that, but not everyone's very comfortable with port forwarding or messing around with their router. So in Fantasy Grounds Unity, they came up with this cloud server version where basically Fantasy Grounds has a cloud server that allows people to find the connections and then directly connect to the GM without having to worry about port forwarding or anything like that. The last part here, extensions, we're not going to turn any on for our training today, but the long and short of it is Fantasy Grounds has the basic, sorry, it's not basic, but it has what it comes with out of the box, which is very powerful. But if you want just extra things to customize it further, Fantasy Grounds allows its users to have that ability through extensions. So you can see as I scroll through, I have a lot of extensions because I like to tweak my Fantasy Grounds a lot. Some people don't use any. I ran today with maybe like 3 of them earlier. So it's not needed at all. It's just about preference. This is also be where you pick the theme. If you don't pick a theme, there's a default theme, but if you're doing D&D, you might want to do the D&D official theme. One of my personal favorites is the FG Light theme. If you pick a theme, just make sure you choose one. Otherwise, one of them will load, but it might not be the one you intended. So make sure you're not picking multiple, you pick one theme, because you can reskin Fantasy Grounds to look how you want it to, basically. So with that, I'm going to really quickly check the chat for questions, and I'm also going to ask my students, do you have any questions about creating a campaign?
I don't. This seems fairly, well explained here.
Yeah, it's pretty straightforward. Sounds good.
All right. I don't see any questions in chat. I see one person's having trouble. Try refreshing the stream if you're having trouble seeing the stream. It might just be a Twitch issue. All right, so when you're ready for people to join, the reason why we said to keep cloud and public, if you go to join campaign, these are pretty much all the Fantasy Grounds games that people have running right now. And you can see that most of them are password protected, so you can't really just randomly join. If someone didn't have a password, then like this one, for example, you theoretically could just join their game, which probably maybe they want people to join in randomly, maybe not. Once you join someone's game, the history will be here, and then you don't have to worry about having to re-find them every time. But what we're going to do is I'm actually going to have the students join my game now. I'm going to turn off my Fantasy Grounds stream just because I don't want everyone watching to come in. It's going to be a bit strenuous on my computer. So I will keep the stream running, but I'm going to turn off the Fantasy Grounds page while I give them the password. But what you will do when you're ready to have your players join, you should have them search for your username, which will be up here. So this is my Fantasy Grounds username. So my students would type in VVOLA. They would hit enter, and when they do, it's going to push them into, it's going to push you to the server that you're looking for, tied to that GM. If they put a password up, you'll get a prompt for a password. So we're going to have the students do that right now. I'm going to, again, give them the password, but not really show it on this screen just so that I don't have, 20 plus people trying to connect to my campaign. But for my students, you should see on the screen now, please don't read it aloud, the password I'm going to set. Does everyone see, do you see that all right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So I'm going to hit start. We're going to give it a moment, and then I will turn this back on for the viewers as well. All right. So I am now loading the Fantasy Grounds server. So I think this is a good time to explain the difference between Fantasy Grounds and other VTTs. So most people are used to VTTs that, if they are familiar with some other ones, where the server is basically hosted externally by that service. So that's not the case with Fantasy Grounds. Your computer actually serves as the server. So my computer is going to be what my students are going to be connecting to, and your players will be connecting to. So we'll talk about some possible hiccups that could happen with connection while the students are getting connected. But that basically means that you don't have to worry about some external service if it goes down or if it's having a slow day. It's not going to affect you with Fantasy Grounds. The bottleneck is really your internet, and your players' internet. So if you have a reliable internet connection and your players do, great. If you don't, then your chances are you're going to have trouble no matter what VTT you use, because you need a reliable internet to use it. But you won't have to worry about, if some big event's happening for the weekend, everyone's getting struggling with the service externally. That's not going to happen with Fantasy Grounds. It's hosted on your own computer. All right. So we're loaded in. Question for people: do they need their own copy or just a connection site? Good question. So I have Fantasy Grounds Ultimate license, which means once you have an Ultimate license, which you can do either by month or do a lifetime license. I chose to do a lifetime license, and it's paid for itself a lot. But basically, anyone can join my game. They don't have to have a paid license. They can just have a free demo license. If you don't have an Ultimate license, you can have a standard license, in which case you and your players need to at least have a standard license or higher. You can go to the Fantasy Grounds website for more details on licensing. But basically, if you have an Ultimate, if one person, the GM, has the Ultimate, then everyone else can just join for free. And additionally, they can use your books for free. You can share whatever books you purchased with all your players if you have an Ultimate license, which is what I have, which makes just running games for random people a lot easier for me. Good question, Jumbalolo. Flub, I would say, again, try refreshing Twitch. I don't really know what else I can, how else to get it working. If the stream, it might be like an internet connection thing too. So I'm sorry if you're having trouble connecting to the stream. So for my students, can y'all hit join campaign and jump into the server? While we're doing that, I'm going to bring up the agenda for today's training, which I wrote here. So we're kind of at step 1. I like to warn the audience because the pacing's a little bit not what you would expect. This first 3 parts take up the bulk of the training because we're basically laying foundation. But the last several parts go a lot faster. So we're at part 1 right now, which is getting people connected. We'll talk about how to get players different character stuff after that. Alexis, Brittany, and Matt, are y'all able to join okay?
I'm just having a little trouble with it searching for your name.
Let me type it in the Discord chat that we're in. Try searching for that.
Oh.
Yeah, I get cloud server, I just...
You know what I probably did? Hold on. I think I did the thing I told the chat not to do and left my cloud server on private. Hold on.
Oh, okay. That would explain it.
Yep, I left it. Yep, okay. Never mind, restarting. And this is a good lesson to the chat. That's why you don't wanna, you wanna make sure it's public and viewable. Alright, apologies for that, y'all. So that's a possible hiccup. That'll go into the topic at hand, which is what happens if your players can't connect. One, make sure that you have a cloud server that is public, even if it is password lock. Other issues that might come up, I'm going to walk through them. So to do that, I'm going to open a second instance of Fantasy Grounds and share it with y'all so you can see my screen while my players get connected. So I think you should be able to see. There we go. So what are some other possible issues? So again, make sure that you have it so that it is public, even if it's password protected. In the settings section, it's not going to be visible here because I'm already running Fantasy Grounds. But a common error that some people make is when they first install Fantasy Grounds, they forget to make sure they hit update the first time. Even if you don't have a paid license, you don't have to put anything in the license key, but make sure that your players have put in their Fantasy Grounds username and hit update just so that the rest of the files can finish downloading and installing. That's a common error that I've had people do where they think just downloading the software is enough, but they haven't actually fully installed it. So make sure they've done that. Other less common issues that people might have, if in the settings they change from the public channel to the dev or the beta channel, which most people wouldn't really do randomly, but if your players were messing around and just happened to do it, or if they were interested in beta testing or dev testing some of the newer features that aren't public yet, you can do that by switching the channels. Understand that you should always back up your campaigns if you do that. And if you do that, everyone who's in that game, so the DM and the players, need to be on the same channel. So if you're playing on the dev channel, like, everyone needs to be on the dev channel. If your DM's on public and the player's on dev, they will not be able to connect. So that's another hiccup that can come up. That's two of the big ones. The final thing is the first time people connect to your campaign, again, your computer serving as the server. So they'll get a message that says file list being acquired. On my side, you can kind of see, I can see that Matt and Alexis have both joined, but they probably still see a loading screen on their end. I like to usually tell players, like, hey, I see you connected, you're coming on, just so that they know it's working. But if it takes more than a couple minutes for them to connect, then I would tell them just to close Fantasy Grounds and reopen it and try again. And usually, like, that is just like a hang error that might happen where restarting the software will make it work. Final issue some people have is make sure that, again, if there's been a software update for Fantasy Grounds, everyone has updated. It's very rare, but I have had a case where I've updated to a new version of the software where it was like a very substantial update where, like, the players also needed to make sure that they updated as well to make sure that we're all on the same version. So I just make it a habit of telling my players to run their updates before we start playing together. I see another question. Is there an option to play solo? You mean like just mess around in your own game? Yeah, you can. So the way you would do that, I'm going to demonstrate here for Jumbalolo. You're coming in with all the good questions today, huh? I would just go to when you load your campaign. So I have this one that's character creation, for example. Let me actually show you an example. Here's my one with my characters for Pathfinder that I play. I just turn it on LAN and don't give anyone my connection info, or you can do cloud and private, and that will just let you have a space where if you're like making or DM prepping or whatever, you can just do that. I kind of oscillate between these two. Basically the point is that you don't want anyone to come in. You can also keep it public and password lock it and not give anyone the password, but if you don't want anyone to join, then you might as well just make it private or make it so that no one can connect if they don't have your connection info. Hopefully that answers your question.
Violet,
Mm-hmm.
if you don't mind, just as a question there, is there a particular reason why you kind of go back and forth between doing it as LAN or cloud when you're setting it up privately?
It's not really any specific. If I'm not trying to have people connect, then it just happens to be whatever I put it on at that moment. Sometimes I put it on LAN because I know no one's going to be able to find my room. So, but private will do the same thing. It's usually what I put it on if I'm like prepping an adventure, or like it's just my private room for characters. If you did want people to connect, the reason you might want to use LAN is if the cloud server, this happens very rarely, but there has been 1 or 2 times where the cloud server was like down momentarily, and that's what allows people to forego like going through the port forwarding and all that and just connect directly to someone else's server. If that happens to be down, you will still have the option to connect via LAN, which is pretty nice. You have basically an alternative in case something's going on with the external cloud connection service. Does that answer your question, Alexis?
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
No worries. Just scanning the chat for any other questions. Yes, it is very good to go private if you want to help, like, play test your own stuff, or turn on the dev channel and check out some of the stuff and do it without having other people come in and all that. All right. So we have everyone connected. So let's get them set up with characters. So looking back at our agenda, which I'm just going to quickly hotkey down here. We got everyone into the room. I can see the 3 players. So we're going to talk about 4 ways to get people's characters in your game. So the first 2 ways, of course, are the ones we're familiar with, to just make the character from scratch. Alexis, Brittany, Matt, we're not going to make characters from scratch because that will take too much time. But I am going to show you how you could do that if you wanted your players to do that. First, before we do that, however, you need to make sure that they have access to the materials they need to build characters, aka the player's handbook, Xanathars, etc. So what your players and what you can do as well is you need to open the appropriate books. Imagine that a module, which we're going to be using the term module, just like campaign is an analog to a room, a module is an analog to a book. So we need to open the correct module so that we have access to that data. So to do that, we're going to go to library. When you click on library immediately, anything that you've already opened, so in this case, I already have the Dungeon Master's Guide module loaded, I have the Monster Manual loaded, I have the Player's Handbook loaded, is going to be visible. But if you want to load extra things, you're going to go to the modules section, and you're going to basically be able to search anything you've purchased from the Fantasy Grounds store, anything that you've loaded from third parties on your own, it's going to be visible here, and you can search for it. So if I wanted to load Xanathars, I can search for Xanathar. And in this case, I have Xanathar's Guide to Everything, which I can choose to load, and I have the player's version. I'm going to very quickly switch views to here. Now you may be wondering, Violet, what's this X versus this check mark? So basically, since I have an ultimate license, like I said before, even though anyone connecting can have a demo and basically not have bought any books, I can share my books with them. And I can choose what I allow to share or not. If it has a check mark next to it, I'm allowing them to be able to open, if they choose, the Xanathar's Guide to Everything for the player's version. But I have an X next to the general Xanathars. And generally in Fantasy Grounds, they kind of split the player content versus the whole book, just so that if you as a DM don't want, for example, the players to have access to everything in the Dungeon Master's Guide, but you do want them to have access to the, I believe it's the Death Cleric in the Dungeon Master's Guide, the player character options, you can have one thing be allowed and the other thing not be allowed. And the way you can switch that is just by clicking it. So now the players won't see it. If you check it off, the players can load it. So if I have Alexis, Brittany, and Matt, can you go to Library and Modules and search Xanathars? How many modules show up for you in your view?
Just the one, the Player's Guide.
Yep, just that one.
Exactly. Now, if I hit check, can you try searching Xanathars again? You might have to close the module and reopen it just to refresh it. How many are visible to you then?
2 now.
Awesome. So that's me turning on permission for them to load things. I'm going to hit the load, and one thing I like to warn people, when you first load something in your campaign, whether you're the player or DM, some people are like, oh no, my Fantasy Grounds is crashing. It's just give it a moment. You have to remember that it's loading every bit of data that's in that module. So that's like spells, characters, text, pictures, like everything that's in there is loading. Once you load it once, whenever you come back to the campaign, you won't have to do it again. If you unload it, it will close it. But now that I've loaded it, I will see some of the Xanathar's options if I choose to make a character. If my players chose to open it, they will also see the Xanathar's options for character creation as well. Alright, so that's how we open modules, and now we can see, because I loaded Xanathar's, it's visible here as in my library as well. So how do we make new characters? When you hit the characters button, you will see that the easy way that I recommend for new people is to use something called the character wizard. It's going to have this blue star. When you click on it, basically it's going to load any options from any books that you have access to and basically make it as easy as clicking what options you want. So if I want to build an elf and I decide I want to be a wood elf, it's going to apply whatever proficiencies automatically for me. I hit the next page. I can choose what kind of stat distribution I want. So if I want point buy, it'll total the points. It'll make the appropriate racial adjustments. You can choose the class, background, and as you go to class, I'm going to skip ahead. It's going to ask you pick, so maybe I want to be a sorcerer. It's going to ask you for your proficiencies, your specializations. You can choose what level in case you want to be a higher level character. And it's going to help automate a lot of those steps for you and apply the proper things for you as well. You'll have an option to customize spells if you are a spellcaster and choose feats. Variant Human is also included in here. If there is an error, so you see down here, there's these exclamation points where it's saying, pick your skill proficiency. If there's any kind of error down here, it will tell you, in which case it won't allow you to save the character. But if you take all the steps correctly and you name the character, once you finish doing everything, it will let you save it. In this case, I'm not going to build a whole character. But again, to access that, that's that blue star in the character option to open the character wizard. The older school method of making a character in Fantasy Grounds is to start with a blank sheet and drag and drop everything. So I'm going to demonstrate that as well. In this case, we're going to come to the first theme of this training, which is Fantasy Grounds, essentially the interface. Once you learn the basics of the interface, you pretty much know how to use it for every part of the software. So first one that I'm going to teach you, whenever you see a plus sign, that lets you add a new type of data for the category you're in. So I see Matt already added a blank sheet there.
To click things. Yeah.
That's totally cool. Click away. So in this case, if I hit the plus sign, it's going to make this blank character sheet. I'm going to name the character blank character. It's completely empty, but I want to drag on the stuff that I need to make this character. In this case, what you're going to want to do is, I don't really see class or background, and you might be thinking, where is it? I can actually customize what buttons are visible here at any one time. So to alter that, I'm going to go to Options. I'm going to go to Sidebar, because this is my sidebar. And you can individually click on and off what's visible here. So this is with everything on. They also have preloaded settings. So if I'm creating a PC, I might just click Create PC, and it'll preload the ones that you need to create a PC. So in this case, I need race. So I'm going to look through race. Again, I'm pulling the races from all the different places I have. So I can drag on gnome. It asks me what kind of gnome. I'll be a rock gnome. Class, you can drag and drop again. I'm going to be a barbarian. And I can pick my proficiencies. And if I want to keep leveling up barbarian, I just drag on more levels. And when you get to the appropriate level, it'll ask you for the proper subclass and all that. And same thing for background. I'm not going to build out a whole character, but this is the other way to make a character from scratch, is you can just add a new one and drag and drop the features on there as well. Some people prefer this just because you can be a bit more specific and tweak things a bit more heavily as you're doing it, since you're doing it manually versus a character wizard, but it's really up to you which one you decide you want to use. In this case, I'm not creating a PC, I'm a GM, so I'm going to click the GM preset, and I usually like to use that and then add the spells option, and that's usually the one I personally use, but again, you can customize it and like drag and click which ones you want visible depending on what you prefer. Okay, so with that, another common interface thing for Fantasy Grounds, if I want to make a blank character, and the theme that I also like to tell people is, if you don't know what you're doing in Fantasy Grounds, let's say you forgot, right-click. A lot of things are under right-click menus, and usually you'll figure out what you're trying to do if you just right-click on the area that you're trying to. So if I forgot that the plus sign was to add a character, if I were to right click, I would see this like little menu, and I don't want to close the window. I do want to create an item, and that's another way I could create a character. So that's a very easy way. If you're ever lost, just right click and it'll probably help you find what you're trying to do. All right. Question, is it beginner friendly if I wanted to teach my kids to play? So I would say it depends on what age level your kids are, and how much into the automation you want to get. When I was first learning Fantasy Grounds, I just used it for maps and tokens because I didn't really know a lot of how to use it. But as I got more and more proficient, I started bringing in more automation and just basically more of the like stuff that can really make the software very powerful. If your kids are like brand new to D&D and like maybe you feel like learning new software might be difficult for them, maybe you don't want to front load all the new automation features. I would say you know your kids best, so based off of the training that you're watching, make a judgment call on how easy it is, depending on their age level, it is for them to access some of these things. You can also have them use pre-gens if you want to take away some of the cognitive load of trying to make a character and understand D&D and also learn a software, just to make it a little easier for them. All right, so with that, let's talk about the other two ways to get characters in the game, which is maybe someone's bringing in a pre-made character or you have pre-gens. And so let's talk about if you had a pre-gen that was pre-made that was in a module, which we said was the equivalent of a book. What we're going to do is we need to make sure we load the pre-gens. In this case, I don't have my pre-gen module open. So can I have one of my students tell me how I'm going to load a new module or book? Can you walk me through the steps real quick? I would say tweens should be able to handle the software just fine, Jumbalolo. It's just like, it's going to take them time, just like anything. But, walk them through. I used to be a teacher, so we had this thing called gradual release where, you kind of hold their hands at the beginning, but you let them go and as they learn more and more. So I would say you probably want to take that tact with it and maybe slowly introduce new features to them. Sorry about that. Go ahead, Alexis.
Oh, yes. You would just click on library.
Good.
And then on modules. And I would guess since it's pre-gen, you'd probably search pre-gen or scroll through each page till you found it. Make sure it's checked and hit load.
Beautiful
Although the
job.
check is if you wanted to share it with player.
Excellent. Beautiful job. And in this case, there's like 300 pre-generated characters in here, so I'm letting Fantasy Grounds do its thing and load before. I'm not going to click anything right now just because there's a lot of characters that's loading. But excellent job, Alexis. Kudos to you. And once I load that, I'm going to have access to this pre-generated characters to give to my players. So while it's loading, Alexis, what kind of character do you think you want to play today?
Ooh, today I'd say a spellcaster, so like a sorcerer or wizard.
Can I have you do a wizard just so that I can use you as an example of how to do the fourth method of getting a character sheet in the room?
Yeah, sounds good to me.
Awesome. How about Brittany? What character are you looking for today?
Let's go opposite of my current character and give me like a gnome bard or something.
Alright, so we'll look for a bard and we'll see if we have a gnome one. And then Matt, what are you thinking?
Well, sounds like we need a tank. So I'll go paladin.
Alright, paladin. Cool. So for Brittany and Matt's characters, I'm going to show how to load a character from a pre-gen module file. And then for Alexis's character, let's pretend Alexis gave us a XML file, which is basically the file format you can save a character sheet externally in. And so she's showing up to my table and she gives me the file and she says, can you import this into your game for me? That way you can see both ways to get these characters in the game. So in this case, here's my pre-generated characters file on the list. I'm going to click on it and I'm going to click on pre-generated character. I'm going to wait because, again, there's like 300 characters in here. And this is a pay what you want module that's available on DM's Guild. It's by Rob Toohey, so you can search for it if you'd like. I just keep it on hand for new players just so I can pull characters for them easily. So we said we were going to look for a bard. And let's see if we have a gnome one. We do. So I'm going to, once I open this, as you can guess, we said earlier, plus means add. I'm going to add this pre-generated character. Don't pick it up yet, though, Brittany. I want to demonstrate something. So I'm going to right-click and delete these ones that Matt had earlier, because we're going to give Matt a new character. But right now, Alexis, Brittany, and Matt, when you open the character selection screen, how many characters do you see?
See a level 2 Bard Gnome.
All right.
Yep, same.
So now, the reason that everyone can see it is it's like if I put a blank, like a pre-generated character sheet on the table. Everyone can see it. It's up for grabs. Brittany, can you click on it to claim it now, please? All right. Can I have Alexis and Matt close your character screen and reopen it? How many characters do you see visible now?
None now.
Yep.
Exactly. And that's because Brittany basically took ownership of this. Pop quiz, if I wanted to make it so Brittany does not own this anymore, I didn't teach you it, but I told you if you don't know how to do something in Fantasy Grounds, what should you probably try and do?
Right click.
There we go. So if you right click, you'll get the option to either take ownership of it as a GM if you want to control it, clear the owner, which will take it away from Brittany, or I can delete it as well. So now if Alexis and Matt reopen their character sheet, character menu screen, how many characters do you see now?
I can see the gnome again. The bard.
Awesome.
Yep.
So that's just demonstrating how ownership of character sheets work in Fantasy Grounds. When someone loads into your game, they will own whatever characters they owned before unless you took ownership off of it. So if Brittany takes ownership of this gnome bard, which you can now, Brittany, I won't take it away from you anymore.
Are you sure?
I'm sure. If she were to leave and come back, this would still be owned by her. I can always add another copy of the sheet if I want to. In which case, Alexis and Matt would also be able to see this copy now. Alright, so now we said Matt wanted a paladin. P is before R. Matt, what do you think? You get half-elf paladin. I have an elf paladin, a changeling paladin.
Let's see, Warforged. Let's go Warforged.
Alright, so I'm going to again hit the plus sign. That's going to add a blank copy of a Warforged paladin. Matt is going to click it on his side and then have access to it. So that's the third way, again, adding a character from a pre-generated module. The fourth and last way would be via XML upload. So as a DM, the way you would do this, you would go to the character screen. There's going to be this arrow that says import character. The first time you click that, it is going to take a while for me because, again, it's basically scanning your system for any pre-generated module. So it's going to load the 300 ones from the module. So you could go this way as well to load it. But it's also going to scan for any characters you have across campaigns. Which is why I kind of keep a room called Violet's characters. Because when I go into other people's games, I actually self-import my characters. I look for my campaign called Violet's Characters, and I self-import my character that way. But you can see all my different campaigns, blank characters that people have accidentally made are loaded along with the pre-generated character. We want to import a file, though. So I'm going to click again down here where it says Import Character File, and it's going to open a window. In this case, it's going to open a window on your system, whether it's Mac or PC. By the way, Fantasy Grounds Unity, if you've used Fantasy Grounds Classic, you might have used it with Mac and maybe had a rough experience. I want to let you know that if you are a Mac user, it's very different with Unity and you'll have a much easier time using the software. So I encourage you, if you did try it before and didn't have the best experience, to try it again. But this is basically a systems menu. You're going to navigate onto the system where you have the XML file. In this case, my XML file I have saved in a special folder that I use for the training. So, oops, now I'm just going to go to import character file. I'm going to navigate to that special folder. And in pre-gens, let's pretend Alexis gave me this High Elf Wizard too. I'm just going to select it and hit open. And you'll see in the chat window it says that this was successfully imported. And Alexis and everyone else, if you look in your character screen, you'll now see that a High Elf Wizard 2 is available. So that's how, if someone brought an XML file that they saved from one of their other games and to import, that's how you would basically do it. Any questions? I'm going to check the chat, and I'm also going to ask my students any questions about what we just went over.
Yeah, I have a question. Just with this, do you know if anyone has ever tried to grab a converted JSON to XML file from, say, D&D Beyond to be able to upload a character?
That's a good question. So this is not officially endorsed by Fantasy Grounds, but there are converters out there that I do sometimes use personally, not as a Smiteworks employee. I'm just saying personally as a DM in my private games, where someone can basically convert their D&D Beyond character to a character XML file and then be able to import it into Fantasy Grounds. So it is out there. It's third party, people who are passionate about D&D and just want to be able to give other people more options. That is available. I just want to make sure it's clear it's not something that either D&D Beyond or Smiteworks made. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. And thank you.
No worries. I also see Jumbo Lolo asks, is it possible to build hybrid characters? Yes, you can multi-class. In the character wizard, you have the option of adding more than one character class if you want. You would just tell it, I want to be level 1 of this and level 1 of this. Or you can drag 2 different characters on the sheet and you can multi-class that way. Any other questions from the students? Okay, in that case, let's go to adding, so Alexis, can you go to characters and click on the High Elf and you'll take ownership of that? And what we're going to do is, how do we get portraits into the game? So I'll show you how to use the portraits in the system and also how to add your own, and I'll let y'all decide if you want to add your own. So I'll demonstrate by making I'll use this other gnome bard. You can rename it just by clicking in the name and writing in a new name. So I'm going to write new name. And then once you do that, you're going to see this blank square that's supposed to be your portrait. It's going to open this bag, and you might be thinking, there's nothing here, Violet. Yes, double click the bag. And basically, based off of what books or other things that you own, they will have different portraits loaded from it. So if you have some themes from Fantasy Grounds, because you bought art packs, it might be there. So in this case, if I go to D&D 5e, I can go by race. So if I'm an elf, and once I click that, it's going to load any portraits that are from elves. You can also go to assets if you are the DM and look for portraits this way as well. But not everyone wants to find portraits this way. They might want to import their own. So these are some of the examples of ones I've imported. The way you would import your own is you would go to folder, and you're just going to drag whatever portrait you want in here. So I already kind of put one, but I'm going to demonstrate it step by step in case, you just want to see the whole process. So I'm going to click my portrait, click folder. These are different pictures that different people who have played with me have brought in. I'm trying to remember where I had the file. I remember I saved the URL for this very reason. Alright, so folder, I'm going to basically find my picture. So this is one I drew when I was like 13, I think. If anyone in the chat can guess where this picture is inspired from, 2 points for you, because this was fan art that I drew when I was 13. But basically, you're going to copy and paste it into your portraits folder in Fantasy Grounds. You only have to do this once. Once you do it, it's always going to be available as a portrait option for you because it's in your Fantasy Grounds folder. Once you do that, if you go to data now, it should be visible. If not, just hit refresh and you'll see the portrait that you added visible to select there. So I can click it, and now that's the portrait I have for this character. So I'm going to let Alexis, Brittany, and Matt load their portraits in, and I'm going to check the chat again for any questions. Hello, Reaper Miniatures. I see you're rating in. We're just going over how to learn how to use Fantasy Grounds to run D&D. Basically going from if you know nothing to how do you run a prepared adventure or module or D&D book. So if you're interested in learning how to use the software or you've been curious, this training is going to go on for another couple hours. And we're basically going through everything you need to know to be able to run a game for your friends on the VTT. All right. So with that, Alexis, Brittany, Matt, any questions from you?
So far, so good.
All right.
Good.
Same.
I'll give you another minute to load in a portrait. I love some of these portraits. Beautiful. And also, I see some people already went ahead, but if you haven't, just rename your character and then put in parentheses your actual name, just so that I know who is using which character. Besides that, I'm going to go through, and since we did finish part 1, I'm just going to hit change it so that it's small text so that we can mark it off as done. Are there any last minute questions from either the chat or the group about getting people connected to your game, what pitfalls there are, or the 4 ways to get the characters in or to load your own portraits? All right. I don't see any questions in the chat, but again, I'll be checking in. I think we're going to do about 1 break every hour, so we're going to start the next part. And somewhere in there, we'll take a 5-minute break just to get everyone get a chance to grab water before we continue. But I'll give you a heads up before we do that. All right, so let's go to interface. This section definitely takes a while to get through, but again, the theme I want you all to keep in mind is once you know how to do something in one part of the interface in Fantasy Grounds, you pretty much know how to do it in 90% of it, because a lot of the interface is the same. So what I mean by that is, here's my sidebar, and these are different kinds of data that's being pulled from the modules, which, question for the class, I said modules, real world analog is?
Books.
Like campaigns, adventures.
Books. There we go. Campaigns, adventures. Excellent job. Awesome. So, question, can I buy it on Steam? Yes, you can buy it on Steam. Does it work with Roll20? No, this is a different VTT. So Roll20 is its own VTT. Fantasy Grounds is its own VTT. You basically have to choose which one you want to use. But hopefully, after looking at this training, if you like it, you'll be interested in trying it out. Don't forget there's a demo version, so you can always just play with it on your own before you make the decision about whether or not you want to use the software for your game. All right, so we want to make sure that basically if we go to library, I'm going to use Curse of Strahd as the example without trying to get too spoiler heavy, but if we click on this in the library, you have what's called the reference manual. And the reference manual is essentially as if the way the book is formatted if you were to get the physical book and open it in front of you. So if I look, here's the front page. It's going to have links to the various sections of the adventure where you can click the hot links to jump to those parts, but you can also flip through it. If there's any special conversion notes, they'll tell you about it, but you can basically read it in order this way if you'd like. You can also click on different links and information, and it'll take you to those types of data. So that's the reference manual. But besides having it all collected into a reference manual, Fantasy Grounds actually takes the book and will basically cut up and split up the different types of information from the book and categorize it. So, for example, anything that is text, it's going to probably go into the story section. All your NPCs and monsters are going to be in NPCs. Items that are specific to the book, items. Handouts, maps, things like that are going to be in images, etc., etc. So, when you load a book, it's basically loading the data for these different types for every single book. So, once you go into something like story, and you're looking at all of them, you can see I have story text from Curse of Strahd, but I also have, gonna skip some pages because Curse of Strahd takes up a lot of story text. Maybe it's easier if I filter it. I have some story text from the pre-generated characters. There's not a lot of story text from the other ones I've loaded because I don't have other adventures loaded. Maybe images would be a better example. So you can see I have images from Eric, the monster manual for the Aarakocra, but I also have images from Curse of Strahd. I have images from the Dungeon Master's Guide. It's basically taking all the data you chose to load and categorizing it for you. So we're going to basically spend this section going through these different categories of data so you understand how it's used, what it's used for, what it means, and so that way you can use it in your games. Question, what are the parcels? So we will get to that. It's going to be near the end once we talk about items, but I will answer what parcels are later on in the training for you, Griffin. Don't worry. All right, so we're going to start with story text. And so basically this is kind of where if you're not using the reference manual to read the adventure text usually gets stored in here. And usually when someone converts it, they will put it, they will number it so that if you click open the story text, you can actually flip through it in order of reading as well, just because it'll be numbered appropriately. Usually in the story text, it will have any box text that is already in the adventure will be visible here too, where you can actually click it and it will pop the box text out to your players in the chat box. So as you are reading it to them, such as text that appears in a box like this, they can also visually see it for those players who are more visual learners and are more visually motivated. Anything else like maps and other images are also going to be visible here, but it's basically going to be the bulk of the text of the adventure is going to be in here. Now, let's pretend, in this case, I'm not going to run Curse of Strahd, so I want to unload Curse of Strahd, and instead I'm going to do Defiance and Flan, which is an awesome adventure written by Sean Merwin. It's the first adventure that was released ever for Adventurers League, to my knowledge. And so we're going to pretend that I'm running that today. Someone who's not Alexis, because Alexis answered last time, can someone walk me through how to unload Curse of Strahd and load Defiance and Flan?
So you'll go into your libraries.
Good.
And you'll go into modules.
Awesome.
Then you'll find Curse of Strahd.
Good. So I'll just search for Strahd.
Alright, then you will click unload.
Good. And when I unload it, I'll know it's done because the book closes. And then?
And then you can search for Defiance of Flan.
Mm-hmm. And in this case...
Makes me hungry. And then you click load to load it in.
Awesome. I made my own special editions, but we're not going to load that. We're just going to load the base file. This is what comes with the module if you purchase it on DM's Guild. And I loaded it into Fantasy Grounds to use for play today. Alright, and once I do that, excellent job, Brittany. It's going to be visible here for me to use as well. So now if I go to story, I will see the Defiance and Flan text, but I do not see the Curse of Strahd text. So let's talk about patterns. Let's pretend that I wanted to add my own special DM notes to Defiance and Flan. Maybe I'm making my own changes and I want to keep track of them. Can someone remind me, how can I add something new?
The plus button.
Good.
Down at the bottom.
That's wave 1. So I could add something new that way, and maybe I'll call it 00 Violet's additional notes. 1. Can someone, and then once I'm done editing it, so maybe I'm going to say, don't kill the players is my note to myself. Once I'm done doing whatever edits I want, I'm just going to hit this lock button. Fantasy Grounds has this, so that way, once it's locked, you can't accidentally, so I'm going to type really loud. You're going to see that I'm not adding any more text to that. If I want to, I can always unlock it, and then I can add more text this way. But if it's locked, it's not going to be editable. Alright, so that's one way. If I don't remember that the plus button adds extra notes, what's another way that I could add it?
Right click.
Excellent. Right click and you'll get an option to create item, and I will do the same thing. Excellent. So that's one pattern we learned. If we wanted to edit things here, like delete things, we could right click and delete, but the other way, this is another common thing for Fantasy Grounds, is wherever you see a pencil, it basically lets you edit whatever list you're looking at, whatever data list you're looking at. So if I hit edit, I will get the option. I can now go through and delete these things. So if I wanted to delete this, I could click it one time. You notice that it did not delete. Fantasy Grounds has like a little system where it doesn't want you to accidentally delete things, which can happen. Like you might accidentally click credits instead of this. So you actually have to click it twice before it'll let you delete. And then once you're done editing, you can always hit the pencil again and stop editing. Alright, but let's pretend that I didn't want to delete. So these are Violet's notes, 00, and maybe my notes is do kill at least one player. And I hit lock to not make it editable. But right now it has no category. So if I do this drop down list, this will actually let me filter what categories I want. So if I want to see things that are only story entries that are only from my DM training, I can do that, where I have my agenda and my folder URL. If I want to see things that are only from Defiance and Flan, I can do that. I can also do that quickly by clicking on the category here, and it'll jump me to Defiance and Flan. Or anything that I didn't categorize is going to be an uncategorized. In this case, I want this to be in Defiance and Flawn. I want this to be saved there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit my drop-down menu, and I'm going to drag this into the Defiance and Flawn category. It disappeared from categorized, and if I look, it's now part of Defiance and Flawn. And I will also find it if I go into that category as well. So when I've done that, maybe you want to make your own special category. So dropping down, without me even telling you, can I have one of the students tell me how I would probably make my own category?
There's that plus over on the right there.
Patterns and Fantasy Grounds. I'll add my category. It will usually name it Group 1. So then I'm going to hit Edit, and maybe I write this as DM Notes. When I'm done editing, what do I click? One of the students? When I'm done editing, what should I click?
The pencil again.
Pencil. That'll stop the editing. And now, if I want to recategorize, if I want to take Violet's notes and I want to recategorize it from Defiance and Flawn, I would down-click, drag it into there, and now it's going to get moved out of categories. Cool. So that is the same regardless of what type of data. I'm showing you this as story entry, but this works for all of these different types of data. The last thing I want to show you is if you want to make a duplicate of something. Maybe I have notes that I'm doing for... oops, I did it accidentally too fast. My bad. Maybe this is my notes for the party that is... I'm trying to teach a lesson to. So this is Violet's notes for the party that is too... they're too cocky right now, and they need to be knocked down a notch. So I'm going to kill at least one player. I don't actually do this, by the way. Don't do this. This is very mean, but we're just doing an example. But I want to make a different version of notes for players where they're much more easygoing and they really can't handle a character death. One thing I could do to very easily duplicate this, I can drag and drop this, and that'll make a copy. So maybe this is my notes for my party that is don't kill. And my notes here is don't kill anybody. So I was able to make a duplicate version of that and make my own edits like that and lock it when I'm done. And now I have 2 copies of these notes. All right. Any questions from the... I'm going to check the chat, but also from the students. Oh, that's a good question, Griffin. I'm going to answer that in a sec. Students, do you have any first before I get to Griffin's question?
Yeah, I had one. So if you did delete something accidentally or on purpose or from a module, would you be able to like reload the module to get it back?
Yes. So to demonstrate this, and this also ties to Griffin's question, because they were like, can you edit main entries? In this case, Defiance and Flawn, the main entries are not locked, but what you will see, and the best way for me to demonstrate this is to reload, Curse of Strahd, because this is a good example. With ones that come from Wizards of the Coast, like Curse of Strahd, they will usually be read-only entries, which means, to answer your question, either I think you can't delete them, or if you can reload the module and reset it so that it's back to the baseline. You can't permanently edit the base file for that because it is like something you purchased from Wizards of the Coast and Fantasy Grounds. So you will be able to refresh that and get it back in case you accidentally delete something in that method. But here's an example of Curse of Strahd. Oh, I guess this one is a... Let me think of another example. I'm trying to think of an example. Let me show you with the images, because I know this will have a good example with this. So I'm showing with images, but this works for other kinds. A lot of times with stuff you purchase from Fantasy Grounds and Wizards of the Coast, you'll see how this says read only. I can't unlock this to edit it. If you have that, what you need to do is basically, it's not letting you edit the base file. You can duplicate it the same way we said before, drag and drop. And now if I open this duplicate, I'm allowed to now edit, and I can like edit this in case if I want to make it a happy Aarakocra. I'm allowed to edit this however I want because I'm not editing the base file. So basically, Griffin, to answer your question, just make a duplicate of the file that's like your copy, and then you can do what you want if it is read-only. But sometimes it's not. So for example, the Curse of Strahd story notes, I can just unlock and edit myself. So here is my edit. And And once I edit it, I think I put in the, which note did I just click? Oh, I probably should have paid more attention to where I edited it.
I think you said Curse of Strahd story notes.
Was it in? We'll just use credits because in this case, because I forgot which one was it. Here. So here is my edit. So that's credits. I believe if you make a change, so for example here, you can go here and hit revert changes. So you see how I had to edit here? Now my edit's gone. So if you accidentally edited a main base file, you would do something similar to that, Matt. If you accidentally delete something, you would just revert the changes for the module overall, and that way it will like bring back whatever the base level files were.
Just to ask, in that case, say I just deleted like the credits, but nothing else in the module. Is there, if I were to revert it, would I lose all the other notes and things I'd set up in different sections?
So if you were to revert the whole module, it's going to reset like the stuff related to that module. But if you had like I have this category here that I made called DM notes, that's part of your campaign. That's not part of the book. So it's just gonna revert any changes that you made to the book. So if you wanted to save those changes, there's actually a way to export edits you make. So kind of the way I did it here with Defiance. You can see I made this extra mod file. I don't have it loaded right now, but I actually made my own tweaks, and you can actually export your changes to a campaign as its own thing. So I usually do this if I'm editing a base file, and that way even if I like reset or whatever, I can always load this and save my changes that way as well. That's like a step beyond what we're going through today, but I can demonstrate it at the end off camera for those, or if anyone in the chat really wants to see that and we have a little time on the tail end, I can also show it if we have it. But you can basically save your changes that way, and that's a way you could do that without having to worry with it being directly tied to the campaign permanently. Does that answer your question, Alexis?
Yeah, it does, but just if I could, as a sort of similar question, when you were doing, maybe I just missed this, but right-clicked and had the option for revert change. I think you just were able to click revert change and then it automatically did it. Is there a way to make it give you like a warning note to make sure you don't accidentally click that button?
I don't think there is, just because to kind of get there in the first place, it's not going to show this now. You're only going to have the option on things you've edited, so you can see I've edited this one. So that's the only one it's going to have. It has this little pencil to show that I've made a change to it.
Okay.
It's really hard to accidentally click it just because you'd have to right-click and then, like, you know, go to it. So there's no safeguard against that. The safeguard is usually with accidentally deleting it. Like, you would have to click twice to delete. But even to get to revert, you kind of have to do 2 clicks, right-click, and then revert to be able to do that. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you.
No worries. No worries, Griffin. Alright, so we kind of went through a lot. We went through how to make new categories, how to make duplicates of data, how to recategorize them, how to delete things, how to revert changes to things. And I want to stress again, also how to unlock and edit things. But these changes, these steps we went through work the same for all these other categories. So I'm not going to re-show them in the later data categories. Instead, I'm going to describe what these things are for. But before we do that, we're going to take a 5-minute breather. It's 17 after the hour, so let's come back at like 23 after the hour, depending on which hour you're on, and we'll continue going through the interface of Fantasy Grounds. Drop any other questions you have in the chat, and we'll get to them when we come back. Stay tuned, and thanks for tuning in. Let me... Hey y'all, we are back to continue with the Fantasy Grounds training. Just wanted to see if... Oh, is it over? It is not over, Storycaster. We were just on a short break, but we are back now. Thank you, Griffin. Does everyone hear us okay? Music's okay? Volume's okay? Just want to check before we continue.
Yep.
Sounds good. All right. Again, feel free to throw your questions in the chat if you're just joining us. We're basically going through how to use Fantasy Grounds to run your D&D game, from just got the software to being able to run a full adventure or campaign with it that you purchased and are ready to go. So, awesome. We're going to continue on with the interface. Again, this section takes a while just because this is the backbone of pretty much all these other sections, but we're going to speed through the rest of it because, again, like we said, a lot of Fantasy Ground interface is patterns. So the ones we've done so far is plus sign to add new things, pencil to edit things. We know categories are down here, and we know drag and drop of a link will cause it to make a duplicate. We can also drag it into a category to recategorize it. So let's go to images. I know I said map, but really the proper name is images. And the reason for that is any image from the book that has, regardless of the purpose, is going to be in here. So it could be images that are headers, images that are handouts, images that are maps, images that are alternative covers. Like, any image is going to basically be pulled and placed in here for whatever purpose, and you can share them with the players. So in this case, it's pulling images from the monster manual, such as the Aarakocra. It's pulling images from the backgrounds for the player's handbook. It's pulling images from Curse of Strahd and just everywhere. So pretty much when I'm ready to share the images with the players, we already walked through where I made this duplicate, of an Aarakocra, and I edited it. Fantasy Grounds image capabilities are very powerful, so I'm going to give you a teaser about it. We're not going to go through how to do everything in depth, though we will touch really quickly on line of sight and effects. The reason when we get to the combat section, the reason we're not going to go in depth is because the software is very powerful in this regard, and so you don't need to know a lot to get going and basically get basic maps set up with line of sight. It's actually very easy, but if you want to build a map from scratch using tiles and assets in Fantasy Grounds that have line of sight already part of the assets, you can do that. But that's kind of like 201 instead of 101. If you're interested in learning more about that, Josh, who is the staff artist for Fantasy Grounds, does a stream every Saturday on the Fantasy Grounds Twitch, and you can actually watch him build a map from scratch, all the way up to line of sight and like all the extra stuff, basically using the assets in Fantasy Grounds. So he would be a really good person to watch basically do that. Anyway, back to images. Let's say my players run into Aarakocra and I want to share this picture to them. Really quick, if you don't know how to, what would be your guess, Alexis, Brittany, or Matt, about how to share this to you?
Right click.
So I right click and I'm going to see a lot of options, but the one I'm looking for is sharing. And then once I click that, I can hit share record, or if I am already sharing it, I can stop. So when I hit share record, it's going to pop it up on the player screen, and I can tell that because it shows like all three of their icons down here. But also if I look in the images section, it says this P next to it for public, which tells me, oh, this is shared to the players. If you as a DM, or if the players, because if the players have a bunch of stuff open, they might have a lot of things that you are not directly sharing with them, but are still in their images section or any of their edit data sections. You can go down here to where it says filter by sharing mode. Right now it's showing me all my images. I can click this and filter to what I've just shared specifically. And in fact, this should not be shared. So I'm going to right click and hit stop sharing. So right now it's just showing the Aarakocra because that's what I explicitly shared. So this is a very easy way to see and kind of keep track. What have I given my players already? The other benefit of that is if your players lose an image or lose a handout, instead of you having to go find it and re-pop it out to them, they should be able to go to images and hit shared and find it on their own and reopen it on their own. So if they close a map accidentally, this is how they could find it themselves. Now, A lot of the same things I want to point out, by the way, is in the other category. So you can share story entries, you can share these others. Again, it's not specific to images. I'm just showing you one of these features in that. I do not like this song, so I'm going to go next. There we go. All right, so once we have shared it, if we want to unshare it, we can right-click and stop sharing. If we want to share something but not pop it up to the players, what you would do is share it from the images file section. And what this will do is it will give it to the players, but you'll notice that it does not pop it up to them. Matt, Alexis, Brittany, did you get a pop-up for the Aarakocra just now?
No.
All right.
No.
So this would be good if you wanted to discreetly like get something preloaded on the player's system, but you don't really want it to pop up just yet. I use this if I have players with really poor internet connections where I know that it might take them a while to load a map. I might like discreetly share it ahead of time, and that way, once I am ready for them to see it, I can just hit reshare again, and it'll pop it up on all their screens, but it's already been transmitted to their system ahead of time. So that's a very easy way to do that. If you don't want to share it to everybody, so, well, actually, let's show something else first. Right now, it's called Aarakocra, but like we said, let's say I wanted to edit this. First of all, one of my students, can you tell me how I can make this image editable again?
The lock up in the right.
Excellent job. And once you unlock it, you'll see this other category, which says unidentified image. Maybe you've never heard of an Aarakocra, so my players are going to instead just have this called Birdman, and I'm going to change it from ID'd to not ID'd. Can I ask Alexis, Brittany, or Matt, what is this image called for you now?
Birdman.
Birdman. So this is another feature. It's not just images. You can do this for items and NPCs as well. You can hide the identity of things for your players so that even if you share it to them or show it to them, it can be named something different. So they wouldn't know what an Aarakocra is, but they might call it a Birdman because they don't know any better. So that's a good example of that feature. And then when they do discover what it is, you just ID it. What is it called now for y'all?
Aarakocra.
Perfect. So once they find out, maybe they did a nature check or something and they are able to ID it, then you can ID that for them as well. Alright, so that is images, long and short. We'll get into maps and adding grids when we get to combat and adding new material. But is there anything that I might have missed or any questions from the chat or from the students?
This is random, so it may not be, something you want to discuss today, which is fine if not. I just noticed when I right-click, I can bring up the, enter drawing mode.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a way to prevent players from being able to draw onto an image if you just want to, share it with them but not allow that?
I think you just lock the drawing layer. So if you look at my section, I usually don't lock it, so double check it, but I think if I hit lock, then you shouldn't be able to add drawings to it anymore. That's a very cute wig that you put on the Aarakocra, though.
I was trying to give him a crown.
Oh, I see. Okay.
I was trying to figure out how to draw a law degree in under 10 seconds.
That's a really good question, though. Are you able to draw anymore, or is that is my what I said correct, and you're not able to edit anymore?
It's locked now.
There you go.
Thank you.
And I can delete this by going to drawing and then clearing drawing, and I think I would clear yours, but I believe I have to enter, and then I can erase. Or maybe, I have to edit first. Or actually, this is on the drawing layer. So, where is my eraser button? There we go. I think because I drew that as a layer versus players drawing it as just drawings, it was in a separate layer from what y'all were doing. All right.
Interestingly enough, it did let me clear my drawing even though it was locked. So I was able to remove my drawing.
But not add anything new to it.
Now I can't add anything back in. So. Good.
All right, let's talk about if maybe sometimes one player finds a handout. So I'm going to stop sharing this to take it away. You can see the P disappeared. But not every player sees the handout, or maybe you're passing something discrete to just one player, whether it's a story note or something like that. what you can do is drag. This is a good time to introduce the idea of links. So in the themes of different fantasy grounds, it will look different, but usually it's a dragon, or if it's in the default theme, it'll look like a shield. This is basically a link to this data entry. So this is the link to the Aarakocra data entry. This is the link to my agenda for trading data entry. If I drag this link and I drop it on, let's say I drop it on Mercy, what happened on your end, Alexis?
It opened up for me.
What about Brittany or Matt?
Nope, got nothing.
There you go.
It's not in my images list either.
Exactly. And if you look here, it says shared. Instead of a P, it says S for shared with, and it tells me which players I shared this to. So I believe if you filter it, you'll still see that it's been shared, but it tells you specifically who has access to it and who doesn't. This is very helpful where, for example, with NPCs, you have maybe people with familiars or animal companions. You might want to make a duplicate of an NPC and name it their, like, I don't know, their bunny, their war bunny or whatever, and you could share that directly to the player who has access to it, but no one else, since it's their NPC or it's their handout or it's their secret note. So that's another thing that's really helpful to know. All right, so that is images. Let's talk about notes, and this is a good chance for players to practice what we've learned. I have some notes here that were from my last training. Can someone remind me how I can delete these to make a fresh start for y'all? There's two ways.
You can right click.
Good. So right click, delete. What's the other way?
To click on the pencil for edit.
Excellent. And that will let me just very quickly double click and delete these notes. So I'm going to have each of the players open up and add their own notes here. The function of this section is basically notes for players. It's a space where players or a DM can make some quick notes, whether players maybe are doing an investigation and want to keep track of things, or want to, I usually use it where if I generate a new shop with a random, like a random table, I will put the information in a note and share the note to the players. Now, what you'll notice is, Alexis, how many notes do you see in your section right now?
Oh, sorry. Wait, right now I see one.
All right. Even though Brittany and Matt have made notes, Alexis cannot see it yet. And the way this is specific to notes. So we're used to being able to right click and share, and we as a DM can do it. But the players can actually share their notes with each other. So Alexis, if you go to your My Test note, can you check off public? And Matt, I see checked off query. And so now if you look in your notes section, Alexis, which notes do you see?
I now see all three of them.
Excellent.
I just saw Dear GM shared.
Awesome. So that's a way players could, for example, keep track of different notes that they want to keep track, or maybe they have a note that's called clues that we've gathered for the mystery, and maybe they make one player note keeper. Now, beyond that, let's talk about linking things, because like I said, in Fantasy Grounds, we have links to things. Can I have everyone open their images section? And I'm going to share the Aarakocra to everyone. Can you unlock your notes and each on a new line drag the Aarakocra link into your notes? How can I eat flan as a robot? That's a very good query. All right. So here we see Brittany drag the image of an Aarakocra, so she made a new link to it. So basically, this is a very easy way. This is functionality that's throughout all different kinds of Fantasy Grounds where you could interlink data. So you can link an image onto a story entry or onto a note. You could put a story entry onto an image. You can put as a pin. You can link encounters onto story entries, etc., etc. You can basically interlink things however you'd like. Now, you might notice a difference between Matt's and Alexis's versus Brittany's. Because Brittany put it on a new line, it's just going to put the link and the name of the link. But if you drag the link onto the same line where you have text, you're basically saying, here's my link, and you basically are naming it whatever text there is. You can always change the text, but instead of it saying Aarakocra, it's linking the Aarakocra image to that text. So just make sure you like know the difference depending on what you're trying to do. New line if you want it to preserve the name of the original text. Same line if you want it to be linked to the text that you're putting in. And can I have a reroll? Not today, Brittany. Maybe next time we play. All right. When the players are done editing, how would you make this so that you couldn't edit it? What would you click?
The lock up in the right hand corner.
Awesome. And that's pretty much notes. Pretty straightforward. Any questions from players or chats before we move on to everyone's favorite section, which is NPCs in combat?
One question I had, so if you drag a link into like a note, is there a way to remove the link?
Yes, you can. So what you're going to want to do, you can either... What you would do is, I'm going to unlock it to demonstrate it in Brittany's note, if that's okay. Just go to the beginning of it and just backspace, and that will get rid of the link. And now it just leaves the text. I can just erase the text as well. Sorry, Brittany, that I got rid of your link.
That's okay.
Does that answer your question all right, Matt?
Yeah, that makes sense.
All right. Let's talk about NPCs and combat and encounters, because that's where some of the strength of Fantasy Grounds really starts to shine. So let's open the NPCs, and my favorite type of NPCs are dragons. First student to name a type of dragon can pick the color, so name whatever color you want.
Green.
All right, we are opening a green dragon, so an adult green dragon. All right, so here's the NPC stat block. It's from the monster manual. If I wanted to be able to edit this, right now it's read only. Can someone remind me how I would make it editable?
You would go back and make a duplicate of it.
Yes, exactly. I would duplicate it, and then I would be able to make it my edits. So I can, if I were to drag and drop this green dragon, here's my duplicate, and this one is editable, in case you wanted to change the stats in some way. Griffin, parcels come right after NPCs and encounters. We're almost there, don't worry. So basically, in the stat block, almost everything is automated for you, where you can just double click or drag and click to make rolls for the NPC. Excuse me. So for example, this adult green dragon, it has a dex check of only +1, so I would click the C. If I click it once, it will make a dex check. That's probably good luck. I rolled a 20 in the first one. But if I hit the S, it will do the dex +6 save. Oh, I think I hit the check. My bad. There we go. Here's my S for the save. So you see 18 + 6, 24. It basically can read this line and know if you have proficiency to apply it. Same thing with skills. If you have proficiency in skills, you can see as I hover over it, it highlights. So I can double click this to make an insight check. Or I can click and drag it to the chat box. Your chat box is like your table. So you need to drag it to the chat box to basically have it count as a roll. You notice that it has immunity to poison. What this basically means is if a player targets this dragon with poison damage, it will automatically negate it. It will not apply it to the dragon. So if your damage types are written incorrectly here, for resistance or immunity or vulnerability, Fantasy Grounds will calculate it correctly for you. This dragon has multi-attack, and its attack rolls, I can also double-click the attack roll or drag it here. It will roll it and apply the bonuses for you and give you the result. I can choose to roll with advantage, in which case I click ADV, and it will automatically roll the attack roll with advantage, drop the lower die, give me the final result. Same thing with damage. I can double-click on damage. Specifically, here's a good example with piercing and poison. So it should be 2d10 piercing and 2d6 poison with a +6 for the piercing. If I click it, it will roll all the die. It will split the damage, so you can see 10 piercing and 9 poison and give me the total. If the player was resistant to poison damage, it would know to have the 9 to 4 and then only apply 14 damage to that specific player, even if the other players are supposed to get 19. So a lot of this is automated. The last thing I'm going to show you is the poison breath, and it kind of leads us to a good segue of the combat tracker. So what is the combat tracker? Well, the name kind of gives it away a little bit. where this cross swords button is up here, you'll see it if you hover, it says combat tracker. Right now, my combat tracker is blank. When you first load players in, you should make it a habit. You should only really have to do this once if the campaign room you've made is only for a certain group. So for my home game, I don't really have to load the players in. But for AL, where the players rotate, every time I open them, I delete any players that were there last time and I drag in the new players. And basically, you need to do this because this is what allows a lot of the automation for Fantasy Grounds to just happen. So now that I've put the players in here, I'm going to drag my dragon in here. Right now, if I ask Alexis, Matt, and Brittany to open the combat tracker, again, the cross swords button, what do you see in the combat tracker?
I see all three of us.
Yes, but do you see the dragon?
No.
No, and that's because when you drop in NPCs, here's what happens automatically. 1, the initiative will get rolled for you. You don't have to worry about rolling it yourself. It'll just generate the initiative without you having to worry. 2, it will hide the monsters if you are intending them to be hidden. So that way you don't spoil a surprise and you can kind of preload monsters before the players know they're about to get into a fight. I can make this visible by either clicking the eye below the NPC to highlight to basically reveal one NPC at a time, or I can click the eyeball at the top to show all the NPCs if I have more than one. So the reason I did this is I wanted to demonstrate the dragon's breath. Right now I'm targeting the players. I'm going to talk through targeting more specifically in the combat section, but I just want to demonstrate the level of automation that Fantasy Grounds can do if you choose to take advantage of it as a DM. So because I targeted the players, where is its dragon breath? Here we go. So here's its poison breath. I can roll it from here, I can roll it from here. I'm going to have the players make their DC 18 con saves. They do not have to roll. If I have them targeted and I click this, it will automatically, for all 3 players, roll their con saves. You can see it tells me who failed. So Mercy failed, which is Alexis. Matt failed. Yeah. And Brittany passed with Frankie Sinatra, so great job. And this is a good thing that she passed because we'll demonstrate the next thing. Fantasy Grounds will actually remember who had passed or failed. So when I apply the 16d6 poison damage, it will roll it. They all will die because that's way past their health. But more importantly, it did 6. That's a really high roll. Wow, that's above average.
That's
it did
a good roll, girl.
What's a good roll? It did 69 damage. You can see that Frankie Sinatra only took 34 because she saved, while the others took 69. So Fantasy Grounds automation will get to that level where it will remember things like who saved and who didn't so that you can apply effects or damage appropriately if you're targeting them correctly. But that comes into basically having the combat tracker set up, and that's kind of where a lot of the power of the system comes in. Again, it's up to you whether you want to take advantage of this, but if you do, it's there. So that's a good example of NPCs. I'm just going to delete that from the combat tracker by right-clicking. All 3 of my players are unconscious right now. I can remove this effect. Basically, because they're unconscious, this is another example where Fantasy Grounds will know they're unconscious, so it will basically, things that attack them will have advantage automatically. I won't have to click the advantage button because that's one of the effects of being unconscious is things have advantage on you if they're in melee with you, so it will know that and apply it appropriately. I can remove that as well. I'll walk through a bit more specifically how to do that, but we're not quite at that stage yet. So that's NPCs. Any questions from the chat or from the players about NPCs? Hello, Magic Fighter.
Well, I have a question that I'm going to guess may be coming up in the future, but when you are doing this and you're rolling attacks like a breath weapon attack, will it also be able to figure out like distances and if someone's within the cone and things like that?
That's an excellent question. So you would want to choose your targets appropriately, but there's drawing tools on Fantasy Grounds to basically help you draw out your cones or something like that. And that way you can see who's in your cone and you can choose to target only the people who would affect. So basically, it's not automated to that level, but it's probably good that it isn't because if you think of things like what's a good example? I think Evocation Wizards can spell sculpt, right? you wouldn't want everyone in a certain area to be specifically targeted. You would want to pick and choose who's targeted. So the software operates on you choosing who you want to target, and from there applying whatever roles that you want to do. Seems pretty straightforward, Griffin says. Does that answer your question, Alexis?
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
No worries. All right, so encounters, I'm not going to spend too long on it, but I do want to show what this is. Basically, when you have, I'm going to open Defiance and Fawn as an example. When you have a combat, do you usually only have one monster? No. Unless it's a dragon, then you probably should have one. But if not, usually you have multiple monsters. And so what the encounters are is exactly what it sounds like. You can take multiple monsters, put them together in an encounter, calculate their XP, and be ready to go. So what do I mean by that? I'm going to open a map. So I don't want to spoil Curse of Strahd, so we'll spoil something from Defiance and Fawn instead. So I think this has an encounter in here. Here we go. Yep, perfect. So we'll use this example. So here's a map, right? Again, like I said, you can interlink things in Fantasy Grounds very easily. So the person who built this built this module, linked to this map, their story entry, in which they linked this encounter in this box text. So when I click this, you'll see here's the encounter. It has 3 goblins and 2 wolves. You might notice these check marks on here. That's because the way this encounter was built, when I load this in the combat tracker, the person also pre-placed the tokens for me. So it's ready to go. My initiatives are rolled. It's hidden. It's placed on the map. It's very easy, and I'm ready to roll, basically. If you want to, you just unlock. The same way you did before, we already talked about how to make new things. You can make new encounters and drag the monsters you want in. I can alter the number, so maybe I want 4 goblins instead of 3, because this is the group of players I'm trying to kill. And you'll notice how it's not checked off, because this one hasn't been placed. I can choose where I want this last one to go, and once I do, it'll check it off. I can refresh to recalculate. The CR didn't change. Let's put a few more goblins. Let's do a 6. Just so that we can see the CR change. I'm going to clear the combat tracker right now. So I've placed these new ones. I refresh. The CR still didn't change, but you can see the XP changed. And now when I open this encounter that I've edited and hit the down arrow to load it into the combat tracker, all the placements are saved and it's ready to go. I can reveal them all or reveal them one by one, as we said before. Basically, encounters are collections of monsters. That's the long and short of it. Any questions?
No, it's really cool.
Yep, it's one of my favorite parts. Now, let's say once your party either kills the goblins or talks with them, maybe you want to note that they've done this. I'm going to save this encounter over here and show you when we get to the party sheet, which is going to be after items and parcels, Griffin. Parcels. How to basically track XP. So for now, I'm going to right click this and actually minimize. And you can do this for most any window in Fantasy Grounds. You can minimize it. Or if I want, I can drag the link down here to my hotbar. And so I'm putting this on 4, which means if I hit F4, it will open up this as well. So I usually prefer to minimize. That's my preference as a DM, but it's up to you. And I usually just drop it somewhere that is out of the way for me. All right, so items. Items are pretty self-explanatory. They have a lot of the same features you would expect. So here's an alchemy jug. It's not ID'd, so if I were to drop this on Matt's inventory, let's say I gave it to Matt. Matt, if you look in your inventory, it's only named jug, and that's because it's non-ID'd, so it's giving the non-ID name. And can you tell me, what does the text say for you for this item if you click on it from your inventory?
Let me see.
So, click the link to open the text.
Oh, this ceramic jug appears to hold a liquid.
All right, does it say anything else?
Nope, that's it.
All right, and that's one of the features for specifically magic items. If you don't ID them, they will only show for the players the name and the notes. But let's say the player casts Identify, so Matt, I'm gonna ID your alchemy jug. You notice the name changed? And what does the text say now? Is there more text?
Yeah, now it says it's a wondrous item. It says it's an alchemy jug.
Yep, and it should have all the...
It's got all the stuff in it. Yeah.
Perfect. So, just like before where we showed with images and also NPCs, this has the same feature. You can choose to ID things or not. For regular items in from the PHB, so like this amulet, it'll just usually have a cost and a weight and the information. It's pretty straightforward. Parcels, however, because I know Griffin was asking about that. If we go to parcels, I like to tell people parcels are to items what encounters are to NPCs, which basically means parcels are collections of items. So imagine when your players get to a certain part in the story, so maybe they finish killing the honor guard and they open a chest or they dig through the bodies. When I click this open, it's going to have all the items they would find gathered or ready for me. I don't have to, save them on a story entry. I can instead put all the items in a parcel and then just link this parcel into a story entry or my notes or wherever I want or on the image. And that way it's just really easy to find. And I don't have to worry about gathering from multiple places what the items the players found. So here's the parcel. In this case, the players found a scroll of comprehend languages. I can click the link to see it. I can choose to either have it ID'd automatically for the players or not when they find it. And they found a small tourmaline worth 50 gold. You can always, like before, if I wanted to edit this parcel, what would I click, students?
The lock.
And you can then add items. You could drag them in. You can add some custom items just by hitting plus, and maybe you name this like a custom item if you're making it up on the fly, where you could then go in and edit this entry and say this is worth, yeah, you found something for sure. It's worth 1,000 gold. And just basically do it off the cuff that way. You could add in a stash of gold. So maybe I put in 1,000 gold, and then when I'm done, locking it back, and now I've customized this parcel. So with that in mind, encounters and parcels, they're not just helpful to help you collect things, they're helpful to help you track things and then award players XP and items later. And the way we're going to do that is through something called the party sheet. So before we continue, are there any questions from the chat or from the students before we trudge ahead? Those skellies had bank. Yes, they did. Alright, Alexis, Brittany, Matt, are y'all all good?
Yeah, good.
Yep.
Alright, so we're going to go to the party sheet, which is here. And as we look, this party sheet right now has no one in it. I'm going to drag in the players, and when I do, this is a very easy way to see a summary of the player's information at a glance. So me as a DM, I can open this, and it has sticky windows, meaning wherever I close it, when I open it again, it'll open in that same section. Same for the combat tracker. So you can move it where you prefer and then just know that it'll open in that space. So I can see their ability modifiers for all their abilities at a glance. I can see their passive perception and their AC at a glance. I can see their senses, so who has dark vision and who doesn't. I can see that no one has HP. I wonder why. At a glance. I can roll their saves, roll their abilities for myself if I want. If I want to hide it, I can roll into this dice tile, which I did turn on. You could turn it on in options if you want as a GM. But also, I can do group rolls really easily. So if I want everyone to maybe make a con save, or let's do a dex check. Like everyone is doing a dex check for me right now. I can click that and hit the roll, and it will roll a dex check for all 3 players for me automatically. If I don't want the players to know that I'm doing a group roll or what the results are, I can choose the eyeball to hide it. So maybe I want to do a con save, and I actually can set the DC if I want. So maybe it's a DC 13. I roll it. And I can see, without the players knowing, do y'all see any die roll results on your end?
Nope. I just saw some shadowy dice roll.
Exactly, but you don't even know what's going on. But on my end, I see that, oh, Frankie failed that con save. Mercy failed that con save. But Mega Pally succeeded on that con save. If you don't put a DC and you roll, then there's no note for success or failure. It just will roll it for you. So you can make this, you can do group skill checks this way very easily at a glance. So that's one of the functions of the party sheet. But more importantly, let's come back to this idea of encounters and parcels and how we use it to track things much more easily in Fantasy Grounds. So if I go to inventory, down here is the party's inventory. It's showing every single item that all the party has and the total gold everyone has. So this party doesn't have a lot of wealth, but we're about to change that. So what I can do is, as I'm running my adventure, I can just very quickly drag this link to this parcel in here, and it will track the different parcels or items the party found very easily. I can drag hold parcels here, and you notice that it'll also add up the gold amount. I can also put individual items here, so maybe I decide that they found an alchemist flask as well. And then that way at the end of the session, when we're all done, we can each open up the party sheet, and you have two options to do distribution. Option 1, the DM can go, alright, who wants the alchemist fire? So of the 3 students, who wants the alchemist fire?
I'll take it.
Alright, so I'm gonna put F for Frankie, and it will autofill the rest. Who wants my 1,000 gold custom item?
Me.
Alright, so I'm gonna put M for Mega Pally, it'll autofill the rest. And who would like the potion of healing?
Sure.
Alright, so we'll put that for M for Mercy. Let's pretend there's 2 potion of healing. If I don't say who, then this will only go to Mercy, but I can always put a comma, a space, and then say who else wants a potion of healing.
I'll take one.
Alright, so we'll give that to Frankie, and it will put an F and hit enter, and it will preload Frankie's name. If I don't assign an item, I can either choose to sell these or hold these for now. So here's the gold, here's the assigned items. When I press the down button to distribute assignments and coins, it will take the 1,152 gold, it will divide it equally amongst the players, so each player got 384. I didn't have to do any math. If I ask Frankie, Matt, and Matt, Brittany, and Alexis, Frankie, Mega, and Mercy, can y'all open your inventories and tell me, did you get the items that were assigned to you?
Yes, that you gave me Mercy's potion.
And I similarly do not see a potion.
Oh, did I mistype the name when I put it in?
It's because we both have an M.
Oh, so I put M and I didn't check who I was giving it to. I apologize. Let's fix that. So here's another cool trick.
Can I hand the item to her, like drag it off my character to her?
Drag the item from yourself, from your inventory, to the chat box. And this is how players can pass items between each other. And then
to the chat box.
Just drag the link, and then Mercy, drag that link onto your character sheet.
Oh, cool.
And Matt, is the potion still in your box? Or in your inventory?
Currently, yeah. Although I don't know if I had one. I had one, and I think I.
Oh, okay. My bad. So let's try it again, just to kind of demonstrate. Can we have you pass your sensor into the chat?
I just put my other potion in. So.
Okay, you're like, you can have all the potions. All right. Do you have a potion in your inventory anymore?
I can go buy some with that 1,000 gold.
All right. You can pick back up that potion. I don't want you to go potionless. But yeah, you can pass items that way. And if they do that, it'll take it out of their inventory and give it to the next person. Unless they have duplicates, of course, in which case it'll take one and you have to pass all of them. The other alternative for players, we can choose to sell these. I'm going to ask Frankie to demonstrate. Frankie, if you open your character sheet, can you drag the Find Magnifying Glass into your inventory? And I'm going to open this so the people watching can see.
You said the Find Magnifying Glass, right?
Mm-hmm. So you notice how it disappeared from here. It showed up in Frankie's inventory. It's no longer available for the party. Let's pretend that everything else that has a gold value, we're going to sell for 50%. You can adjust this number. So let's say that the party was really persuasive, and so the shopkeeper will sell things for 60%. In this case, the only thing that I think has a gold value is a small tourmaline. But when I click this, it'll sell it for that 60%. Things that don't have a gold value will not get sold. And then I can then distribute the assignments and coins, and it will divide up the gold. If you don't assign something and it's not sellable, it will just sit there until someone takes it as like party storage. So that's the party sheet inventory. Order. This is just a very easy way to set watch order. So let's say Mercy says that they're going to do watch 1, Frankie says watch 2, and then Mega Pally says watch 3. You can set that there. And you can also drag them here if you want to be able to have like a prefixed marching order. It's just for demonstrative purposes. If you drop them on the map, it's not necessarily in that order. It's just there so that if you want to like kind of establish it for Theater of the Mind or something like that, you can do so. And then finally, XP. So I saved this encounter earlier, as you might have guessed, based off of the inventory function. I can drag and drop this encounter here, and it will put the XP there for the party. I can also drag what we call quests, which I think I need to turn on, so I'm going to do that right now. Oh, do I have it on already? Oops, never mind. Quests are what basically like story rewards, so you know how in the book there's like certain checkpoints or objectives where if you do it, it's like, yay, they did it, they get 500 XP. So maybe I'll make a new one here, and I'm gonna name this Save the Prince, and because the party did that, they get 1000 XP, and I lock it. So this is for things where it's not necessarily combat related, you just have certain objectives. I can drag this in here. And basically when I do this, at the end of the session, when we've done all our encounters for the day, maybe they also, I don't know, they stopped by in Barovia and like killed some bunch of direwolves or something, or a were-raven. So we'll drag that encounter in as well. At the end of the session, when I hit award, it will take the XP total, divide it up, and distribute it to the party by itself automatically. I can do the same thing for quest. And now you're wondering why didn't it disappear? If you want to keep track of what they've earned, you can just kind of leave it there. You can delete it the same way as normal with the pencil edit to delete. But when you add new things, so that's not a good example because I duplicated the same one. Let's say I add another thing like they found Gertruda. Notice how, oh, this doesn't have an XP value, so we'll give it 1. Let's make this worth 500. If I hit award again, it will not count the 1000, only count the 500 to divide because this has already been checked off as awarded. I could uncheck it and re-award it if I needed to though. And that way you can easily calculate XP without having to do the math yourself. Any questions from the chat or from the students?
Just out of curiosity, when it is automatically dividing this, does it always round up or down, or is it vary at all?
That's a good question. I honestly don't know the answer. I've never paid close enough attention to see, but we can look. If 1000 divided by 3, there should be theoretically 1 left, so I guess it dropped the 1 extra in that case because it gave each of you 333. So will that count as rounding down? I guess, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So-
but the other one went up because if you add 167 times 3, that's 501. So.
Okay, so I guess it varies. That's a good question. I don't actually know what the default is, but I honestly can't answer that. So you got one, Alexis. You got one that stumped me.
Just quickly doing the math here. It looks like I'm going to make the assumption that it's actually using the proper rounding rules of rounding up with like 5 up and down with below.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Alexis. Very observant. I literally never paid close enough attention to realize that before. So I love these classes because I always pick up something new every time I run one, to be honest. Has anyone leveled up now? Technically, yes, but are we going to do that right now? No, because we still have a lot of stuff to go to the training. So we kind of went through the interface. There was a lot we covered. The last, 50 minutes of the training is going to be basically everything else. Again, like I said, this part is really dense, but you've basically seen all the part of Fantasy Grounds. So now it's just, let's put it together, how we roll dice, and how we actually run the book or books that we've purchased with Fantasy Grounds to use. So that'll be up next. We are going to take a break. We're going to do a shorter one this time, so we'll do a 3-minute break. Let's come back at 12 after the hour, so that's 3 minutes and some change. Just to let, I want to refill up on water. Y'all can think of additional questions, and then we're going to speed through the rest of the training as well. Thank you again for sticking in with us, and we'll see you at 12 after the hour. And... Alright, welcome back. Good to have y'all back with us. I think my chair got a little lower. Let me, I think that's a bit better. Okay, maybe a little bit higher. Still? Okay. Let me adjust. Nope. Alright, there we go. Okay, so everyone should be able to see me alright, I believe. So, oh, thank you, Griffin, for the welcome back. We're moving on. So we're going to really quickly, it should take us about 5 minutes, but we're going to talk about the character sheet now. which is what your players are going to be using and facing. And specifically, we're going to make sure to talk about prepared casters, because there's like a few extra things that they're going to want to know versus other players. So I'm going to ask all players to please open their character sheet. I'm going to open my new name character as a demonstration as well. First, one of the most important things, how do you change your dye color? That's like a critical part. There's a little color option up here where you can choose the color of your dye. You can enter a hex code, or you can like basically pick whatever you want here. The alpha kind of changes how much the transparency is. It doesn't really make the dye transparent as much as it like makes the color that's overlaying it more or less transparent. But you can change the dye color that way. And then you can change the text from black or white as well to customize your dye. So if the players want to very quickly in the next like 15 seconds choose a dye color, you're welcome to. Thank you, Griffin. I appreciate the AV check. So once you've chosen, we're going to open our character sheet and kind of look at it. So first of all, as we remember, these links, anytime you click a link, it basically gives you the information about what you're looking at. So I always like to remind the players, they're like, oh, I forgot what I got from my background. They just have to click the link and open it, and they should be able to read it themselves. So I always encourage players to look things up on their own. It's on their character sheet, and especially on a VTT, it's just so easy to pull up the information. There's no reason to guess what a spell does or guess what your racial trait does. It's there. So right now on your main page, you're going to have your abilities and your saves. The way you roll, there's two main ways. You can double click an ability. So if I double click strength on my character, it's going to automatically roll it. It's going to apply the modifier. In this case, it's +0, and then give the result in the chat. I can also drag and drop, from there onto the chat, and it will, another 20, roll it as well. Can I have the players all give me an intelligence check, please? To open your character sheet, by the way, and you can close it freely. You just click on your token either on a map or on in the upper left corner, so you don't have to keep it open perpetually. All right, so perfect. So I see the intelligence checks. It applies the modifier. Since I opened the dice tower, if you were to drag, so can you make a wisdom save? But I'm gonna have you click and drag your save. Sorry, do a wisdom check. But I'm going to have you click and drag the die into the dice tower so we can see what happens. So you notice how it spits all the results out with my pink die for those who are watching from my view. And that's because it's almost like I'm making the roll for them, even though the players are initiating it, because they can't see the result. But I can look at their results. So do y'all see what you got for the check?
Not on my own screen. Oh.
That's exactly right. Yeah, on my screen you can see it because I'm broadcasting to you, but the player does not see it on their side. So this is really great if you have players like I have my players make their stealth checks in the dice tower or perception checks, just because you really shouldn't know whether or not you succeeded or not technically. So at least that's how I run it. So I usually use the dice tower, and again, you can turn that on in the options section. Saving throws are the same way. So can I have the players? I'm gonna double click on my dex save. And it's going to add my modifier. Can I have the players click the ADV button and give themselves a charisma save with advantage? Much like how I did here. Beautiful. Beautiful, beautiful. So the players all were able to do that. So that brings us into these buttons down here. There's ADV for advantage. There's DIS for disadvantage. I'm going to have all the players click disadvantage. And in the modifier section, let's give each other a 10 and make a strength save with disadvantage and a +10. So in this case, you can see my result here. Wonderful. So you can always add a random modifier if you want through this method, as you saw here. The +2, +5, -2, -5 are pretty straightforward. They're just a very easy way for you to do cover, because cover usually is +2 for half, AC to the enemy, +5 if they're 3/4. In this case, if you're rolling as a player, you would just take away 2 or take away 5 from your roll. Initiative is in the center. You would roll it. It's pretty straightforward, but basically anywhere you see this little die button are going to be rolls. Let's go to the skills tab. same thing as before. Here's all the skills. Since I have Bard, it has half proficiencies. You can change the proficiency of something, whether it's a save or a skill, by just clicking the proficiency button. So there's double proficiency for Expertise Rogue. There's half proficiency for Bard, no proficiency, and in this case it was at proficiency. You can also change the stat for something. So if I wanted to do, maybe my character's a gymnast who studied gymnastics for many years, and so she maybe is not super flexible, but she has a very deep knowledge, well, some would say an intelligently based knowledge of gymnastics. So she's going to make an intelligence-based acrobatics roll. You can change the stat on the fly, and it will adjust the total result, and then I can roll that as well. So I can make an intelligence-based acrobatics check, or a wisdom-based persuasion check, or whatever you want, or just do the standard and change it back to the default if I like. So can I have all the players do, with advantage, an intelligence-based medicine check, please? And again, if you have questions in the chat, just throw them down in the bottom so that we know.
Sorry, Violet, I was choking on my water. What roll am I doing?
Advantage, intelligence-based medicine check. And I see a question, what does the symbol by your stealth mean? So, oh, this is basically saying, I believe this is an armor symbol. Let me see. Do I have disadvantage on that? Let's see. Let's roll it and see. I don't quite know, actually. I'm not quite sure what that symbol is. If someone else knows, they're more than welcome to say, but my guess would have been that it was disadvantage, but I just checked and there's no disadvantage from anything. So that's a good question. I don't quite know. Yeah, let's leave. I kind of want to look that up later, so I'm just going to make a note because I don't quite know off the top of my head. That is a good question, though, Griffin. You also stumped me. You and Alexis. It's 2 for 2. Alright, so that's the skills menu. Abilities, this is not really anything to roll. It's just listing out all the abilities the players have, basically from race, class, all that. And as they level up, it'll add. And it just gives you a quick way to click the link and open it. If the player that has the character doesn't have the proper book open, when they click the link, it'll prompt them, hey, do you want to open the PHB? If they do that, just remind them that opening those kind of books take probably 30 seconds to 60 seconds, just because it's loading all of the data from the book. But once they do it once, when they load into your campaign, it will always have it open unless they close it. But once you do that, they'll be able to read the full text if it's linked to something that's in a book that's not SRD, pretty much. Excuse me. Inventory is self-explanatory. Just something to know, Fantasy Grounds auto-calculates weight for you, so if you do happen to care about encumbrance, it will just do that. I would say if there was ever a situation where you'd want to, Fantasy Grounds is probably the best place to do it, because this is the easiest I think it will ever get to calculate encumbrance, and also know off the top of your head your lift, drag, and all that. Notes, pretty self-explanatory. It's as it's written here. Logs, if you participate in Adventures League, you can add logs of your adventures here. And then the Actions tab. This is where we get to some really fun stuff. So for the players, you should all have at least one weapon. Just the same as before, if you double-click the attack roll for the weapon, it'll roll the attack. Damage roll will roll the damage. Anywhere you see a magnifying glass is a good way to inspect a bit further and be able to make changes if you want to change damage types or add dice and things like that. Can I have all the players make an attack and damage roll just to confirm that you understand? That might be it, actually, Griffin. That makes sense. I would say that's a pretty good guess. So Griffin was saying it might be indicating that that skill is susceptible to armor penalty. Because I think stealth is the only one that I'm aware of that has the possibility. So that is a pretty good guess, I would say. If there was, I think that's the closest that probably is for what that is. If we had time, I would look it up right now, but since we're trying to wrap up, I can't look it up real time. But I would put money on that being correct. So
I was Oh, sorry.
Oh, go ahead, Alexis.
I was just Googling that, and that is what it is.
There you go. All right, Griffin, 2 points for you. Good job. All right, so here's the weapons. Spell slots are here. Just note something. If you check off all your spell slots, so I only have first level spell slots, when you're done, it's not gonna, like, if you are in combat mode, it will not show your first level spells anymore because you've used all of them. So in standard, it will show everything you have. Now you might be thinking, well, why would I use these different modes? So this is a bard, so they're not a prepared caster, so this is not going to apply to them. But for my prepared casters, so I think Mercy was an example because you are a wizard. If we go to your actions tab, can you switch your mode from standard to preparation?
Yep.
All right, and now you can prepare your spells for the day by checking them off. So can you pick some spells that you want to prepare? So I see you're preparing Shield, Thunderwave, Mage Armor, Magic Missile, all good choices. This is also where powers that refresh like once a day or maybe once a short rest, you would set them. So here it's once a daily, so once a day it would refresh. If you put it once a rest, then whenever the party takes a short or long rest, it would refresh. Now I want all the players to please switch their mode from standard to combat and from display to actions. And this is the mode I recommend everyone who's playing switch to when they're actually ready to like play and not just customize things, because what it will do is it will make everything very easy to see and have everything be clickable buttons. So for example, in my section, anytime you see a little medicine button, that means healing. So if I'm targeting myself, I'll heal myself. If I'm targeting someone else, I'll heal someone else. Anytime you see a glowy man, it's some kind of spell effect. Anytime you see a die roll, it's casting a spell, whether it's either you making an attack roll if you have a target, or you making your target make a saving throw if it's a save spell. And then blood drop is damage. Really quick, if I know one common question is, well, how do I upcast spells? So for example, let's assume that Mercy wanted to cast Magic Missile. So when you drag a die, if you just hold it and you right click, you can add extra die to it that way. You do need to drop it in the combat tracker or else it will not work. So Thunderwave is a good example where it's 2d8, but I believe if you upcast it, you can go to 3d8 if it has a second level spell. And then when Mercy drops it into the chat box, it will have that. So basically, I recommend playing Fantasy Grounds with a mouse with a right-click button if possible. It just makes it a lot easier to upcast. You can theoretically go in and add different ones individually, but I don't know anyone who wants to do that for 9 levels for all the spells. So it's just easier to drag off, click, drag off, and right-click to add extra die. The die down here... Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Alexis.
Sorry. Oh, I was just going to ask, when you are right-clicking and, like, adding die, does a Fantasy Ground track, like, spell slots?
So it does, in that you can check them off. I don't remember. Oh, no, it doesn't do it by itself. You check them off basically at the top, because it won't mark off a spell slot for you automatically, just because there might be different reasons you're casting a spell, right? Like, it might not be, you might be casting it ritually, in which case you wouldn't want it to, like, mark it off. Or it might be a spell that you have that you're casting once a day because you're one of the races that have a daily cast of something. So you just check it off here, but once you check off all of your spells, Alexis, if you have no more first level spells slots, it will take away your first level spells from you. So I like to remind players to cast what you're casting first and then check off your last spell slot. Otherwise, you gotta switch into the other mode and either uncheck it or whatever, and that can be annoying. So, but you notice how, Alexis, when you switch to combat, the spells you prepared got starred. I think for clerics, they also will disappear and like only show the ones you've prepared from prayer or whatever. I've seen it kind of both ways. I think it might be class dependent, but I've seen different ways with it. So, but the point is that it will highlight which spells that you can use based off preparation. And then you could click the drops to affect them. And so I can see Mercy's already, someone cast Bless. I think that was Matt with the spell effect. And I think that's a good time for us to move into actually running a module and doing combat. Last thing I want to talk about really quick is hotkeys. So you already saw me hotkey like links, but you can hotkey anything. So classic example I like to give is initiative. I'm going to drag my initiative roll and put it on my 3 button, And now if I hit F3, I will roll initiative. I can do this with my character sheet closed. Now, if I don't want to call it initiative, I can right-click it and hit the pencil button. And now I'm going to press and hold backspace, hold it for a while if it's a long name. And maybe I want to call it It's Go Time! Exclamation point. So now that's the name of my hotkey bar. Oops, that's F4. F3, it'll roll my initiative with my new special name, which I can see here. It won't show it here, but it's going to show it here for you. You have more than 12 hotkeys, so if you hold control, you'll get C1 to C12, where if you can see if you have like a... Maybe I want a hotkey acid splash damage here. So now if I hold C, F2, that will roll my acid splash damage, or Mercy's acid splash damage. If you hold A, like Alt, you'll have A1 to A12. If you hold Shift, you'll have S1 to S12. If you hold Control and Shift, you'll have SC1 to SC12. If you hold Alt and Shift, you'll have... I think you can see the pattern here. I think you'll have at least 80, 90 plus hotkeys essentially in Fantasy Grounds. So if you don't want to keep your character sheet open, or if you like hotkeys, you can do that. The only thing I would say is be careful about hotkeying damage rolls to your Shift base hotkey bar, because Shift is also the command in Fantasy Grounds where if you hold it and roll damage, it auto rolls crits. So if you have Shift and you hotkeyed acid splash damage, it's going to crit the damage, whatever the damage is. So make sure that you don't hotkey damage to anything where you're holding Shift at the same time. The dice down here are pretty self-explanatory. You can click them and roll them as well. So I know some people said if you're just playing with kids and maybe you don't want to go through everything with them about how to do Fantasy Grounds and you just want them to roll dice, you can just have them pick up and roll dice. They can roll with advantage the same way. You can right-click to get multiples of dice. So here's 10 d20s, and it'll add the result. You can add the modifier here. You can do 5 d20, and then here's 5. I right-clicked to add extra, so now it's 6. Just the same way. So that's all the dice down there as well. Players or chat, any questions about rolling character stuff or dice at all? If not, we're going to do running a module on combat together. I don't really see any questions in chat, but I'm going to wait a little bit because I know there's like a 15-20 second lag with streaming. Ready to go. All right. How about the players?
Yep, good.
Yeah.
All right. So we're going to put all of what we learned together now and pretend that I'm running Defiance and Flan for you. So we're going to try and move quickly just because I want to make sure that we can get through everything. So we'll run a module and we'll do a basic combat just to show some examples of things. And that kind of is going to encompass 4 and 5. So I'm running Defiance and Flan. What I'm going to do is I'm going to open my story mode. If it has a reference manual, you can always do, like with Curse of Strahd, you can open the reference manual and find from there where you're going to use it. This is an older module, so it doesn't actually come with a reference manual for Defiance and Flan. So I'm going to filter my category. And I'm going to run Mission 5 for my players. So I'm going to open Mission 5 here, which is the Secret Prison. I think it actually starts from here. Yep, here we go. So when I open this, I see that there's box text. As a DM, I'm going to click the little chat bubble to push the box text out to my players while I read it to them. You were told that Madame Fiona's tea kettle was the place where adventurers could find work. Blah, blah, blah. Click again. As the sun finally sets in the west, you settle down for one last beverage. Blah, blah, blah. The door to the tea kettle opens, revealing a worried-looking gnome. Blah, blah, blah. I click the last box text. He peers around and says, "My daughter's been captured. Will you rescue her?" And the party, of course, says,
Let's go.
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah. And as a DM, I see that the person who did this linked some other stuff down here. Apparently, this is a story entry that tells me more details. They linked the place where we're going, which I might save, or I could minimize it and put it to the side if I want, or hotkey it. And there's a reward text, and if I see one of the things the party will find is a potion of healing, without telling the party, I might just go through the inventory section of the party sheet and just drag that in there, just so I don't forget to give it to them later. That might be something I choose to do. So I go through and I open this next section, and it says, okay, this gnome is named Rillo. His daughter got arrested for some minor crimes, but she's been disappeared to a secret prison by some corrupt guards. Can you please go get her? And he tells you that he'll give you 50 gold and his fine magnifying glass if you do that. And I noticed that the person who did this also made a parcel here. The party agreed, so again, as a DM, I might either save this later, or my preference is just to put in the party sheet now, just so that it's ready to go later on. It's your call as a DM which one you prefer to do, but the parcel's linked here, so I don't have to worry about remembering it. I can just pin it or minimize it or throw it in the party sheet. So when I go to the next page, I have my map. Now I remember, I always forget this. Every time I do the training, I forget to reset this map. So I'm going to reset it right now by deleting all the pointers and deleting the drawings and removing all the tokens. I apologize, and I'm doing all of this by right-clicking. And we're going to pretend that, let's say, this map comes with the grid already, but I'm going to show you really quick how to add a grid in case it did not. So if there was no grid for this map, it's always going to have a grid if there is supposed to be one to base. I still have the mask mode on, so I'm going to delete this because that should not be there from default. So this is what the map looks like by default, but I can always change the grid. So what you would do is you would unlock, go to grid, and you can drag the grid on yourself. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit. And there's my grid. I can nudge the grid left or right if I missed it. I can grow it by pixels, so I can designate how many pixels there are if I like. I can also change the color by clicking the color picker. I can change the transparency by altering the alpha. Or I can just hide it altogether. So in this case, I'm going to make it not transparent. So this is what it looks like, but I know there's a grid underneath, so I can just hide it. That way the party uses that base grid. That base grid's really hard to see though, so I'm going to make it visible. Now the two ways that you might want to do Fog of War. The old way is what we would call the masking layer. This is kind of what is in Fantasy Grounds Classic only, and you have this option in Unity. The easy way to do this is to right click, go to Layers, enable Mask, and it will put everything in a Fog of War. Once you do that, you can slowly reveal by clicking and dragging while in mask mode. If you hold Alt, it will let you freehand draw. So you can do like this to draw odd shapes. If you hold Shift, it will let you re-hide things, and Alt Shift to re-hide things with freehand. In this case, let's pretend that this area is not masked. I'm going to show you the other way to do Fog of War, which is Line of Sight, which is something specific to Fantasy Grounds Unity. So I'm going to exit mask mode. I'm going to unlock, and I'm going to just show a very short example of this just because time. But again, if you want to learn more, you're welcome to check out some of the videos on Fantasy Grounds YouTube, or the Saturday stream Josh does where he shows how to make a map from scratch, including Line of Sight. So you're going to go to Line of Sight tool, which is this brick wall looking thing. And it's really easy in Fantasy Grounds. I'm about to show you how easy it is. It's one of my favorite parts of the software. I'm going to hit line, and I'm going to go for wall, and I'm just going to draw my line of sight right now. So I'm going to click. That's my first point. Click. Click. Okay. I'm going to hit escape when I'm done. So that's my first wall. Then I'm going to click a new wall. Click. 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 And I'm done because I'm going to put a door here. Click. 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 Escape. And then if I wanted to draw, maybe you have circular rooms, you could always click and hold it. And if you hold it, it will draw line of sight as kind of it'll continuously place points as you move your hand. So you can just click and hold. I want to add some doors now because I added walls. So I'm going to switch to door mode, and I'm going to use a square for this. Now, I probably should have made the walls a little closer, but I'm doing the best I can. So I'm just going to make it a very thick wall. So if you purchase the module from the Fantasy Grounds store, there actually will have line of sight incorporated for you, so you don't have to do this. But if you're adding your own maps, you would want to know how to do this. There's my 3 doors, and that's it. I'm done. I gave line of sight to this whole room. So now when I go, I'm just going to hit to play mode, and I'm going to hit enable line of sight. And you'll notice this area is not masked, this area is, but it still looks dark. Because when I place the players on here, let's see, I can drag the players one by one. And now you can see that they are actually seeing the line of sight. Or I can hit the little friendly button and it'll drag on everyone who is friendly from the combat tracker. Once I've done that, I'm ready to share this map to the players. Can someone remind me how to share the map? What will you pay us? Yes, someone was saying what the adventurers always ask. So right click, sharing, share the record. Now when your players get on the map with line of sight, this is really important. Their first instinct is going to be to say, it's dark, why is it not working? It's dark because they haven't told the program who they are, so the program doesn't know what they can see. So you're going to tell your players to click their tokens. I'm going to right click and unlock their tokens because otherwise they will not be able to move. I'll lock it first to show you what I mean. So can y'all click your tokens to see line of sight? And now you see Alexis trying to move. She can't move unless I improve her movement. Ooh, Alexis, stop moving so fast.
Oh, sorry.
I can't click. There you go. So you can have that by default, or I usually just let players move freely, so I'll just unlock it, and that way players can move. They can drag themselves, or they can use the arrow keys to move as well for Fantasy Grounds. Alright, so we're kind of trying to keep moving forward. So players, we're playing, but we're not really like playing for real, so I just need y'all to make decisions quickly. You can see that Matt took that to heart because immediately opened my door. So players can open the door to reveal line of sight like Matt just did, or you can do it as well. I don't think there's a way you can lock it, but you would just tell players the door is locked and tell them not to open it. Okay, Alexis, don't open all the doors yet. I'm gonna close that door. Okay. So you come to this room. One thing you might notice on this map is there's this pin. And this is, again, a good example where text is interlinked. I love running dungeons on Fantasy Grounds because rather than having to... Basically, you can run dungeons very easily because the person who makes it is going to pin the description for each room into the map. So I can open this room and easily see the box text, pop it out to the players by clicking it, tell them there's 8 rooms in the cell, that is barred, and I can see the information for the room, and I can also see there's an encounter here. So I'm going to load this encounter very quickly. I open it, and can I have one of the players tell me how I'm going to load this encounter in the combat tracker?
Hit that arrow at the bottom right.
Awesome. So I can press the down arrow. If I do that, it will automatically open my combat tracker for me, roll initiative, and it'll be place the token on the map if it was pre-placed by the creator, which will always be the case for Fantasy Ground modules if there's a map tied to the encounter. So if there was a map where that encounter is supposed to happen in the book, then the person who basically builds the encounter will place the tokens for you as well. So in this case, the party goes, they maybe decide they're going to open all the cells for everyone. Maybe I have them make an insight check. So let's do a group insight check in the dice tower. I don't want them to know if they pass or not, so I'm going to have them roll it in the dice tower to hide the rolls from them. And again, they're doing this by dragging their insight roll die into the dice tower on their screen. So I can see on my end, they can't see the results. But let's pretend this happened. Mercy and Frankie noticed something was off about this prisoner, but Mega Pally, Matt, was like, oh yeah, let's let everyone out because their insight roll was poor. And so Matt decides to go up to the cell and open the door. Now you may be wondering, how do I tell him which cell it is because he can't really see? A very easy way to do pointers. You can always right click and do pointers and drawings just by accessing the right click menu. But to do it very quickly in Fantasy Grounds for both you and your players, if you hold the right and left mouse button at the same time and drag, it will draw a pointer in the color that's associated with your die. So can I have all the players do that really quick? Hold left and right mouse button and drag on the map to draw a pointer. So that's a really easy way to point to things or measure distances very easily. They can always do more complex pointers by right-clicking, going to pointers, and you can draw things like squares or cones. And once you draw it, you're always welcome to drag it to make it bigger or smaller. I often have spellcasters, I tell them to zoom out and do it off map. That way, as they're planning their turns, they can kind of pre-draw what they're using, and then when it's their turn, they can easily drag it onto the map and say, here's who I'm getting. So that's a habit I try to build into my players, is just to draw it off the map so they can get ready for their turns. As a DM, you can always right-click and delete all the pointers if you're like, okay, let's clear the map. Alright, so when I'm ready, Matt opens this prison door. How do I make this cultist visible for you, Matt?
You hit the eyeball up there, right?
Awesome, and now I'm ready to go into initiative. Now here's a mistake that I often make as a DM, is I forgot to reset the initiative. So if I forget to, I can manually do it by clicking the round button and hitting 1 and dragging the flag to the top of the initiative order. But I'm going to show you the other way when we do the next encounter really quick. Alright, can I have the players all roll initiative, please? In the meantime, any questions from the chat, again, just throw them down there. But basically, we're just going to simulate a couple rounds of a combat just to show some of the functionality. And maybe add a quick map, and then we'll be good to go. And you notice how the players, when they roll initiative, the combat tracker is going to automatically filter them. Alright, so we're ready to go. Players, I always tell my players to open their combat tracker because it's going to make running combat and tracking turns really helpful. The other thing I tell the players to do, if you have a map, there's a little arrow in the upper right corner next to the question mark. If you press it once, it'll actually push that map into the background. Then to navigate, you can zoom in or out with your mouse wheel, and you can click the mouse wheel to pan. Alternatively, if you don't have a mouse wheel, this button down here, if you drag it, will let you pan. If you hold control, while dragging it, you can zoom in or out. In case you have a trackpad, but honestly, if you're playing Fantasy Grounds, I really recommend getting a mouse. It just makes everything a lot easier. I'm going to snap everyone to a grid space, and then we're going to start with Mercy. Again, it's a simulation, so don't spend too much time choosing what you're going to do, but I'm going to open a character sheet so I can guide you in case you're stuck on how to do something. Mercy, I'm going to...
I think... Oh.
Go ahead.
Sorry. Oh, no, you first, please.
Oh, thank you, Mutation. So, someone just said you can lock the door as a DM by shift-clicking the door. See, I tell you, I always learn something new. Even though I've done multiple of these trainings, there's always something new I learn each time. Thank you, Mutation. Shout out to you. Mercy, when you do your turn, I'm going to have you control and click on who you're targeting. In this case, I assume the bad guy. So go ahead.
So, hold down control and click on them?
Yep, and now and now if you look at yourself on the combat tracker, you should see it says targets cultist. And if you hover over your icon, you'll also see there's an arrow showing the distance between you and the cultist, and also that you're targeting them. Which means whatever you do next is going to be directly compared. So now you're rolling your firebolt.
Firebolt, yeah.
Did you click it twice?
I did click it twice on accident.
It's alright. That first one, as you saw in the chat, did hit. So I, as a DM, don't have the cultist stat block open. How do I know it hit? Because Fantasy Grounds will, because you targeted it, will automatically compare it against the cultist AC and tell us if you hit or not. So you can roll your damage. You did 1 point of damage, and again, I'm not entering anything. The cultist damage is automatically applied because you targeted it. Let's pretend you didn't target it. So, yep, you did it correct. You control click to clear the target. If you have the map in the background, you can also use the different hotkeys up here. These are targeting hotkeys. Hovering over them are kind of self-explanatory about what they do. But can I have you roll to hit again, Alexis, but without targeting, just to show what would happen if your player did that?
Yes.
So in this case, you still cast the firebolt, but it doesn't tell us the result. If your players accidentally do this, just have them drag the result either to the cultist on the sheet or onto the combat tracker. So can you drag that 14 onto the cultist? And then Fantasy Grounds will tell you, oh, it hit. Try rolling damage without targeting. Alright, so again, it didn't automatically apply, because let's pretend that Alexis forgot to target. She didn't, I just told her not to. You can drag that damage onto the cultist just the same way as you did before. and it will auto apply it. So now you see on my combat tracker, it says the cultist has eight wounds. Fantasy Ground tends to count up. Oh, I probably should take away the damage I did to you earlier from the dragon, and y'all are no longer... Oops, sorry about that, Matt. I just took off the bless effect by mistake, but y'all aren't unconscious. Okay, anything else, Mercy?
No, that's everything.
Moreland West, will the video session stay on video on demand for future referencing? I think that they're going to save the video, if I remember correctly. We did one earlier, but that was the first time, and this is a new video that I feel a bit more comfortable streaming with. So I believe they're going to save it, and they're going to send us a copy to also upload onto the Fantasy Grounds Twitch. But also, if you check the link that I put, I think it's down there, I do these sessions over, so you're welcome to sign up for these sessions if you want to come and be a student in the class. You're more than welcome, anyone out there, to do them. There's no new dates yet, but we post dates every month, and DM Greg is actually doing, I think, a training in a couple days as well, so you can check out one of those as well. Alright, so as a DM, Alexis, she actually did it without me teaching her, so I'm super impressed with you right now, Alexis, because most people don't know this. If you hit the down key, the player can pass a turn themselves, or you as a DM can pass it. And that's just an easy way to kind of do that without having to worry about, is their turn really over? When you do that, you can open the stat block either by clicking the token, clicking the link, or if you don't want to open the stat block, you can roll straight from the combat tracker. I kind of do both depending on my mood and how big the stat block is. So this cultist, as a DM, I'm going to click on the cultist first. And then I'm going to target, control-click, Matt. I'm going to swing my scimitar. I roll a natural 1, so that's an automatic miss. And then I'm going to pass my turn to Frankie. And you can hotkey this as well by dragging it to your hotbar in case you want to just hit F1 to pass. Go ahead, Frankie.
Alright, well, let's see what this rapier can do.
Alright, and you can see that Frankie target the cultists. They hit. And they did 8 points of damage, auto-killing the cultists. It will prompt you, it'll say dying, it'll prompt you to delete it by showing the delete button when you kill something. And so, that's combat's over. But we're going to do one more round. I'm going to assume that you're going to come to this door down here. Which I'm going to right and left mouse click to drag. If you do it once, it'll draw a new arrow. And if you hit right or left mouse click again, it will delete the arrow. Without you having to open the right click menu. So, can we have the players get in marching order here? And we'll demonstrate the other way to reveal a map. So like I said, we used line of sight in this first room, but in the second room I didn't set up line of sight, so when the players open the door, they're still not going to be able to see into it. Oh. Did I have it open already? My bad. Thank you. Because I actually have it masked. So this is the old way, the Fog of War. In which case, I'm just going to right click, go to layers, and hit enter mask mode, and I can click and drag to reveal the area. And that's another way to do that. And now they'll be able to see in. They're not totally able to see here just because there is some walls here, but this area was not line of sighted. Sorry, I think I dropped something. Okay.
It also wouldn't let me move my character into the room until you unmasked it, which was kind of neat.
Yes. Usually line of sight walls and masking area, I think, will prevent you from moving your token in that area. Just so that the players... I've had players sometimes try and do that and get themselves, stuck in walls because they drag their token somewhere they weren't supposed to. So just make sure to drag it back if they happen to do that. I've had a player do it a couple times. Not gonna name names, but Brittany knows who they are. Alright, so the players come into this new room. Just demonstrating again how I would run one more time. I would click the pin to open this room description. I see that this has a little box text, so I'll click the box text to drop it out. Notice, by the way, if I click the player's tokens individually as a DM, I can see what that player can see. So I can see that Matt can't really see over here, but as they move, yeah, I can see their line of sight lines. So if you do have line of sight up and you want to see what the players can see, clicking on their tokens will let you see that. The players can do the same thing as well. If they want to know, what can so-and-so see, they can click on each other to do the same thing. So I pop out the box text. I have this encounter. Again, I can hit the down arrow, but I can also just drag the encounter onto the map. Either way, we'll let it preload. How do I reveal the bad guys in the room from the students?
The eyeball.
Excellent. And then, oh, I forgot to do this last time. I was supposed to show you how to clear the initiative, so let me show you how to do that. So rewind. We finished the last combat. I want to clear the initiative, so I'm going to delete these non-friendlies. You're going to go to menu. You're going to go to initiative. Clear all initiatives. What that will do is if you are past like whatever rounds you're on, it'll reset it back to round 0 or 1. It'll clear the initiative for the players, so I can tell the players, hey, roll initiative. If you have monsters in there, we'll also clear the initiative for the monsters. So that's why I took them off first, so that when I drop them back on, I can have the initiative saved for them. Alright, so can I have the players roll initiative one more time, please? And again, as the players roll on their character sheet, it will feed it into the combat tracker and auto-sort them for me. I don't have to do that, or even click anything to do that. And then, once the players do that, can one of the students tell me how do I start initiative? I don't know if I told you how to do this, but you might be able to guess.
Oh, was that arrow down the lower left there, right?
Awesome. I can click the down arrow, which I also happen to hotkey, so I can hit F1 or just click it. Alright, and the dog is going to be first, which is this wolf. So I'm going to click it. Again, I can double click to open the stat block here. In this case, I'm going to have it move up to here and control click Mercy because this thing has pack tactics. Pack tactics is one of the few things that isn't automatically automated in Fantasy Grounds, so I'm going to click advantage and then I'm going to attack. And you see how I can also click from the combat tracker or the stat block. In this case, I see that I miss Mercy. As a habit as a DM, I tend to clear my target at the end in case I want to easily switch and not get confused by who I'm targeting. And then I'm going to pass my turn to Frankie.
Alright, well, let's try to Vicious Mockery this thing.
Alright, and since Frankie was targeting the creature, it automatically rolled the saving throw for me as a DM. I don't have to do anything. Now, if Frankie didn't target, when they would cast Vicious Mockery, nothing would happen because it's not saying who makes the save. It'll pop out the DC of the save, so if they just want to communicate, that's what save you're making. That would be something you could do, but since Frankie targeted, it made the save. In this case, the dog succeeded, so Frankie doesn't apply any effect in this case.
Sad.
Sorry. Alright, and then Frankie passed their turn. You as a DM can pass a turn as well, but in this case, Frankie's passing it. So it's going to come up to Mercy next.
Okay, then I'm going to cast Thunder Wave. Some here on these two in front of me. I did that right with the template. And then and I'm guessing if I control click on both of them, I'll have targeted both.
Perfect. I love that you drew your platform and you targeted and it rolled the save for both. In this case, guard 1 succeeded, but guard 2 failed. So now click the damage roll, Mercy. And you'll notice that since guard 1 succeeded, it automatically have the damage for you, while guard 2, the damage was full because it failed. And then it would get pushed back 10, but in this case, they're against the wall, so I won't push them back. Anything else, Mercy?
That will be everything.
Beautiful. Then in that case, you can pass your turn. Next up is going to be Matt.
Okay, let's try. Let's target this guard. And I want to see if I can do a command.
Alright. Alright, so in this case, does it make a save for commands? Let's look at your thing. Yep, you're going to make it make the save first. It succeeded. So this is a good example where I think you press the... Let's look at your command section. I think you pressed the...
Did. There was a effect. And
That's
I clicked
okay.
on that, but I needed to do the cast first. Okay.
because this is a good example where we're going to teach now how can players remove effects if they accidentally put it on, or maybe they're concentrating on a bless with other people and they need to drop it. The way you would do this is, you notice how all the effects are represented by a little glowy man? That's like the universal symbol for effect in Fantasy Grounds. So Matt and all players, something to note is any effect that the player applies, they can remove. The DM can remove any effect at any time from any person, but if Matt, for example, put Bless on Brittany, Matt would be able to go and take it off Brittany whenever they want. So in this case, Matt put a command effect on the Guard 2. So Matt, you're going to go to the little glowy man on the combat tracker next to Guard 2, and you'll see the option to delete it, and you did it. Perfect. Just by hitting that little double delete toggle. Awesome.
I saw it also gave me the option to drag it to a different target.
There you go.
I guess if I put it on the wrong person. So.
Exactly. Awesome. Anything else, Matt?
Nope.
All right, we're going to pass the turn. I'm actually going to do something unorthodox. I'm going to have Matt take 2 turns because I want to demonstrate concentration effects with Bless before we wrap up combat. So, Matt, I'm going to push the turn back to you by dragging the flag. And can I have you bless you and your party, please? So you're going to target your allies. You can either control-click on them individually, or there's a Target Friendly Units button up here on the map as well if you have it pushed to the background. And then, can you find Bless? There's the first one, marks it as concentration on self, which means if something attacks you, it will auto-roll the concentration save. Click that, and then the second one is going to add that D4 attack and save. Let's demonstrate that this is working. I'm going to let Frankie, Mercy, and Matt all make an attack roll right now to demonstrate that Bless is actually in effect. So go ahead and pick one of them to make an attack roll against. Alright, so as you can see, it automatically did the plus D4. The players don't have to do that because that effect is now saying every time they make an attack or save, add a D4 please. So Matt, as they are attacked, so I'm going to move on to Guard 1's turn. So maybe Guard 1, Guard 1's going to attack Mercy, and I can do it from here or from here, so I'm going to do it from here. There's the attack roll, they hit Mercy, and then here's my damage. And again, it's auto-applying to Mercy. Mercy can always manually track her health in case you're not using the automation to that level. You can always go into your main tab and track the wounds. Again, it counts up. You can also alter temps here. But you as a DM can also freely alter, but when you have targeting enabled, it will just auto-apply it. Alright, so that's Guard 1, pass the turn. Guard 2. Notice how I'm going to unclick Guard 1 so that when I target, it knows that I'm using Guard 2. It's going to provoke an op attack from Mercy. So Mercy, if you want to take your op, you can. And I'm going to target
Sure.
Matt. So, go ahead and
Actually,
take...
I don't think I have any weapons equipped right now on my wizard. So.
Oh, really? Do you have a quarterstaff in your thing? Here. Let's
I
give
have
you
a short sword.
So go to your short sword, and it's right now being carried. Click if in the inventory, click the little bag button so that it changes to equipped. There we go. Now you should see it in your weapons. Go ahead and take your short sword attack on it. Make sure you're targeting the correct one.
That was Guard 2, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just move. Oh.
There you go. You can see that blast effect in working. It misses. But now Guard 2 is going to attack Matt. So we'll roll the attack roll. It's going to miss, but Matt, just for demonstrative purposes, I'm going to show the concentration effect, okay? So I'm going to do a little damage to you. So when we do damage to Matt, Matt's going to take a bit of damage, but notice how it automatically made the concentration saving throw for Matt. It will take the damage that Matt took, whatever resistances and stuff will apply. It will calculate the DC. In this case, the DC was 10 because it only did 3 damage. It had Matt make the concentration effect and knew Matt was blessed, so it added the D4. Matt barely missed it with a 9, so because Matt tagged the concentration effect and failed, it stripped the effect from Matt and all the people as well who had it.
I rolled so bad during this demo.
But that's a really good example of how high the automation level can get with Fantasy Grounds if you're willing to use it. In this case, you don't have to remember concentration effects. It will auto do it as long as damage is being done, and it will remove them if the player loses concentration. If the player wants to drop concentration, just like we said before, Matt can go in and delete the effect from whoever he applied it to, as long as he applied the effect. Just really quick random conditions. If you go over here in effects, you as a GM can custom make effects in case you want to dive deeper into coding. You can write them in, but the basic stats are here. And usually I have players, if I don't have something set up automatically in an NPC, I will have players drag an effect. Like if they fail and I said, okay, you're blinded, I will have players drag the effect onto themselves. So can I have all 3 players go to effects and drag the blinded condition onto yourself real quick? Alright, and because they drag it onto themselves, in this case Brittany put it twice, they can remove it themselves. And that's just a way for you to kind of take a little bit off your load as a DM. Just to demonstrate how the blinded effect works, can all of you try attacking a guard? It should auto roll at disadvantage because you're blinded. So you see, without them having to click the disadvantage button, Fantasy Grounds knows that blinded means you have disadvantage, so it will roll disadvantage, drop the lowest roll. When you are ready, can all the players hit the little glowy man and delete the effect from yourself? Alright, perfect. In this case, Alexis put it on twice instead. But hit the glowy man, Alexis, and then just hit the... Yeah, there you go.
Yep.
Awesome.
There we go.
So just remember, any effect the players apply, they can remove. Whether it's a bard giving someone else bardic inspiration, or a paladin applying an aura effect temporarily to someone for a roll, or a paladin blessing people. And that is the kind of the long and short of combat. I'm going to check the chat for questions. Let's see. And while I check the chat, do the players have any questions? Definitely mutation. If you want to just drag die onto things, you definitely are welcome to do that. I find that sometimes it can slow things down. If you are open to trying doing targeting, I encourage you to maybe use some of these buttons up here. Because, for example, the target mode can let you to select people very quickly. If you just want to select, like, here's my Thunderwave radius or something. In this case, the guard target all of them. And then you can clear the target very quickly that way. Or you can easily, as the guard, select all your enemies. In which case, it will auto-target the three player characters and then clear. You can target allies very easily that way with target friendlies. If you get used to using this, it'll make targeting a lot faster for you, and that might help ease some of the clunkiness that some people sometimes feel with remembering to control click, that there's some short keys up here if you have the map pushed to the back. How about from the players? Any questions?
So one thing I did notice when I had everybody selected to bless, and then I accidentally still had everybody selected when I made my attack. It rolled it against everybody, but it didn't do any damage to my friends, which is because they're friendly, right?
When you did your attack roll, sorry, can you restate the question one more time?
Yeah, I still had everybody selected from when I did the bless, and then when I did the attack, it actually attacked everybody because of that, but it did not apply damage to any of my party members. I'm assuming that's because they are friends.
Did you click the damage button when you accidentally?
Oh no, that's right. I unclicked everybody and then clicked damage.
That's why.
Okay.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
So it will always.
So I could damage my friends if I did.
Yes.
That.
Let's say you were dominated or something. You could damage your friends if you needed to. If you accidentally do a roll, so can I have you actually accidentally damage Alexis, and then I'll show you how you can fix that, or have your players fix that?
Sure.
Alright, so Matt accidentally did 4 damage to Alexis, but meant to target the other guard. So Matt, what you can do is right-click the 4, the result, and you're going to hit negate value. You can also double or have or do a bunch of other things, but in this case you're going to negate the value. And then I want you to drag the -4 back to Alexis, and that should heal her. There you go. So when you negate and you drag it, that's a very easy way for players to undo something they did accidentally, whether it's damaging or if they accidentally healed something they didn't mean to, rather than you having to go and edit things for them. I'm very much a fan of teaching players how to fix things if they make mistakes with targeting or all that other stuff versus the DM having to do the cognitive load of fixing everything. Yeah, so any questions about combat? We're at the tail end of the training. The last couple of things are going to take us maybe 5 to 10 more minutes to wrap up because we've kind of touched on most of it. But from the chat or from the players, anything else you want to know about what we've done so far?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. When you're ready, you can go to menu and hit delete from tracker. And delete only foes or delete all non-friendly. It's kind of self-explanatory. If you have someone marked as neutral, then they'll get included with non-friendly. When you're ready to short rest the party, you can go to menu, rest, and short rest. And if they have short rested based abilities, it will do that. The party can also, from their character sheet, if you go to your main tab, there's hit dice on the bottom. So I'm going to give everyone a little bit of damage. Can everyone click the hit die in the middle of at the bottom of their sheet to roll their hit dice for short rest?
Yeah.
And it will automatically add the con mod fodder for you. It won't let you roll more die than is possible. So if you are full, it won't let you overroll so you don't accidentally use it. So you'll see you rolled it, but it says, hey, you're not wounded, so it won't actually use it. And then when I long rest you, so I'm going to give you, let's pretend you did another bit of adventuring, so I'm going to give you all 2 points of damage. When you go to menu, rest, long rest, it will clear your spell slots you've ticked off. It will give you back your abilities, it will clear your wounds, and it will also give you back half your hit dice as well. So it'll automate all that for you as well. Okay, so that is that section. Adding new material. We actually did the bulk of this because we talked about how to add new story entries and parcels with the plus button or right clicking. I'm just going to very quickly show you how to add new box text and new maps because all this other stuff we've talked about, either duplicating it or how to add it from scratch. The one thing I would say for NPCs is I usually recommend, if you're new, to duplicate a monster that's similar to what you want to do and then edit it, because you will know that the coding and the wording is already correct for Fantasy Grounds to parse it correctly to let the automation happen if you're basing it off of something that's already pre-built. So let's talk about how to add box text. And to do that, we're just going to show that on here. And this is kind of going to open up the how do I edit stuff in a story entry or any other text-based entry. If you right-click and go to paragraph types, there's just a place called chat frame, which is box text. There's also other options that you can explore. The hotkey for that, and then it'll make a box text that you can pop out. So if you're writing your own, or if you want to embellish or add to box text from an adventure, that's a very easy way to do it. Control 1 to reset it. Control 3 is the hotkey for that. You can go to the different control settings to see the different kinds of things here as well. And formatting, you can just go, and again, there's paragraph types, or you can do the standard formatting here. You can do Control B for bolding, or you can go here and bold, italic, underline the same way you would in a Word doc. So that's kind of how you would add your own box text. Adding your own maps. This one is, and it works the same for tokens as well. So let's say I wanted to add a special token for Mercy that's different from her portrait. Assets, there's a token section. I can open my tokens folder. And let me open my special folder where I had, I think it had in the story entry, DM training, which is down, where did I put it? Oh, it's here, 0 DM training. Alright, so I actually have a folder with some tokens to demonstrate this, and also with a map to demonstrate importing a new map. So I'm gonna go to, here we go. So let's open a new one. Alright, so here's a special token that I made from the image. I don't think anyone in the chat guessed where this image was inspired from, but I'm still waiting to see if anyone can guess. I'm going to copy and paste this token into my tokens menu. And now if I hit refresh, there's a new campaign folder with this token that I can just drag onto the token section. And now this portrait's what's going to show here, but if we look at the map, or if we put Alexis back on the map, this is the token that will show. For importing a new map, it's much the same procedure. I'm going to go to images, click folder. I'm going to pick what my map is going to be. In this case, this map is one of the maps made by Josh. So again, this is why I recommend checking out his stream. It's really dope that he's able to build this stuff with the Fantasy Ground assets. I'm just going to drag that in there to copy it. Refresh. And now in my campaign folder, there's this new image. Now, I can click this image one by one and hit create image record, but let's say you were bulk importing a bunch of maps, so let's assume that we did 5. You're always able to go into images and just hit create from campaign assets, and it's going to import whatever images you put in your campaign folder. And again, your campaign folder is for the specific room, so you don't have to worry about these images going to other places. It's just for this room that you're using. So when I hit yes, it'll open this much nicer secret prison map, where again, we can add a grid by going to the grid button, set mouse with grid, just like we showed before. Very easy to do in Fantasy Grounds, just drag and drop. Let's pretend you made a super bad mistake. You can always go in and edit the size manually. You can nudge it back and forth. You can change the color. You can change the transparency, or you can turn it off. You can also change the distance modifier, so let's pretend this was an overland map. Maybe every square is actually 15 feet, and you want hexes. You can do that, or diamonds, or whatever you want to do as well. So you can alter that stuff freely. The last thing I want to show with maps of Fantasy Grounds, besides line of sight, which we showed earlier, is Fantasy Grounds also comes with a lot of really cool effects that you can also add to your maps. I'm just going to show you a smidgen of it, but I really recommend that you kind of like play with it yourself, and also again check out some really cool tutorial videos, because it's a lot more powerful than what I'm going to show you. But I can add a rain effect, and it will make a new layer called Effects Rain. I can change the effect, like I can add less rain or more rain, or I can make it more intense. I can change the speed and the direction of the rain. I can change what effect is here, so here's some snow. Or maybe it's raining and it's also, I want to add a new layer, and it's also misty. And then I want to add a new layer because it's nighttime. So I'm going to go to time of day, and I can adjust how much of the impact the time of day is making, and if it's night or if it's day as well. So that is just a taste of the kind of things Fantasy Grounds can do, and as you saw, that is ridiculously fast to do. Like, you saw me do line of sight for one room in like 10 seconds, and you saw me add these effects in also like 10 seconds. So just off the drop of a hat, it's very easy to add these extra things to Fantasy Grounds if you would like. Do I have questions from the chat or from the students? Okay. In that case, that's how you add new material, because we've talked about these other things. I think I already talked about adding tokens. Extensions I'm not going to go into huge details on, just because I feel like it's very personal. But if the chat would like, I can give you an Excel doc with the ones I use. Just understand that they're not officially endorsed by Smiteworks or anything. It's just my personal extensions. I'll throw it in the chat before we're done. But the long and short of it is you can heavily customize Fantasy Grounds as you like. We kind of went over lighting already with line of sight. They're actually adding dynamic lighting in the next update of Fantasy Grounds. It's in dev testing right now, where you have light sources and vision for players. So like if players have dark vision, they'll be able to see up to a certain length and all that. So all that's coming. Effects coding, we kind of saw a little bit of it with when, for example, Matt did Bless. That's essentially effects coding. A lot of it comes in the PHB with the spells already, but if you want to learn more, there's a wiki page available where you can see the effect stuff if you'd like. and to basically see how to write your own. But I recommend just using what comes in the book. If you don't really want to dig that deeply into it, that's totally understandable. The last thing I do want to show is how do you add a module if you purchase a book for Fantasy Grounds. Let's say you get Curse of Strahd or you get Defiance and Flan and you want to add it. So I'm going to demonstrate that, and to do that I need to turn on the view so that you see my display. Is there any questions from the chat or from the students before I exit out of the campaign to show this last part?
Nope.
Alright, I'm going to give the chat like 20 seconds to type in a question because I know there's a little bit of a lag. But before I close it, I want to see if there's anything else you wanted me to demonstrate. Okay, in that case, we're going to right-click and exit this session. And when we click that, it's going to have the option to either close the whole program. In this case, I want to go back to the launcher. So I'm going to show you how to import a module. So if you buy a module from the Fantasy Grounds store, when you hit update, it's going to automatically load in. You don't have to do any extra steps. So it's telling me I saved my campaign. It'll auto-save your campaign room. You don't have to remember to, as long as you exit out properly, either by clicking the exit button or going back to the launcher. So when I hit check for updates, if I purchased it from the Fantasy Grounds store or the Steam, which I believe is connected to the Fantasy Grounds store, it will download the files for you. It will update it if there's been any changes. So I saw in Curse of Strahd, for example, it said Organized Play Chris Tulloch, who is the new Organized Play director, I believe. I think that was an update that came through for the module recently. But if you purchase, like I did, Defiance and Flan from the DM's Guild, it includes the Fantasy Ground module file there, and you need to be able to import it on your own. In that case, you're just going to click on this folder button, which is going to open both your Fantasy Grounds system folder. Here's where you're going to find all your portraits if you want to add portraits. It's going to find your campaign file, so if you want to back up your campaign rooms, you can do so. If you're adding extensions, you would drop them in your extension folder, and in this case, I'm going to add my module here. You would just copy your mod file and drop it in here. So you can kind of see, here's one I made, which was Winter Wonderland for one of the CCC adventures for AL. I made this mod file, exported it, and dropped it in here. I ran Weakness of Rock earlier today, so I made the mod file and then I dropped it in here to load it. The reason you would want to make your own mod file is if I basically can take that mod file from room to room, so I don't have to worry about having to reset tokens or anything like that. When I'm ready for a new game, this mod file is preserved the way I originally exported it. So my tokens will be where they need to be, my stuff will be there, it won't hold any edits. So that way, if I go to a new room and I want to tweak it for one adventure but not enough different room, I can do so without worrying about editing the base file. With that, that is the stream for today. Thank you first of all for joining us as we went through how to learn how to use Fantasy Grounds. Hopefully after watching this, and hopefully the students feel the same way as well, you feel more empowered to basically be able to get a book or get a campaign and run for your friends or family. You're welcome to come check out if you want to come play. I'm actually the Adventures League consultant for Fantasy Grounds, so we have a Discord server. I'll throw it in the chat once I turn off the camera, so if you want to come play some AL. I also want to give a shout out to PugCon. If you look up Fantasy Grounds pickup games, they actually have a convention running all weekend that I really encourage you to come by. They have basically many tables all weekend, over 60 tables of free games. They're also raising money for charity, so I want to encourage you to check that out as well. I'll give you a link to their website as well so you can find their Discord. But if there are no other questions, I'll hang around the chat for a few minutes in case you want to ask, and I'll throw those links that I told you I would in that chat. Anything from the students before we wrap up?
I just want to say thank you for this and the whole training and everything tonight.
No worries. Thank you for joining me.
Yeah, this has been really good, really awesome.
Thank you so
you're
much.
Awesome, Violet. Thanks.
Y'all are sweet. I really appreciate y'all being an awesome group of people to do this class with. And thank you for, sitting through and learning all this and just being amazing. And thank all of you as well for tuning in with us. Again, I'm going to wrap the stream up, but I will leave it going for a couple minutes to put those links in if you want to learn more about playing or being a part of our community. And otherwise, happy gaming, stay safe, have fun, keep on rolling those dice.
Yep. And remember the most important lesson. It's okay to put notes saying kill your players.
Thank you, Alexis. I'll see y'all later.